Hey guys, tonight we're boarding a train you didn't buy a ticket for. No windows, no seats, and definitely no return trip. You've just been sentenced to hard labour in the Soviet Union's Gulag system, and not just any camp. No, you pulled the short straw. You're off to one of the worst. Kolyma, Norilsk, Vorkuta, names that echo like coughs in a cold, empty room. You probably won't survive this. Most didn't. But lucky for you, you only have to live through it in your mind. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. What time is it where you are? Drop your city and time in the comments. I'm always curious who's listening in the dark. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The boxcar screeches to a halt after days of clanking through snow and forest. You've long since lost count of the hours. No windows, no clock, just the rhythmic knock of steel wheels and the stink of too many people crushed into one wooden crate. The door cracks open, spilling pale light across filthy boots and sunken eyes. A guard barks, and you stumble out into a world bleached white and wide with emptiness. Welcome to Siberia, comrade. The real one. You're not given any orientation. No tour of the facilities, no keys to the place, not even a map, just shouting. Out! Move! You shuffle through snow that swallows your ankles, trying not to slip or draw attention. That's already rule 1. Don't be noticed. People who get noticed here tend to vanish like steam in the cold. Your destination? A camp with a name that's not on any official map. The guards call it by a number. You and the others are Zeks now, a slangy abbreviation for prisoner. Not even people, really. Just bodies in motion, ready for work, punishment, or worse. A man nearby coughs. Deep, wet, the kind that comes from months of malnourishment and breathing the recycled air of trains and barracks. You don't look at him. That's rule 2. No sympathy. Not because you're cruel, but because it's dangerous. If he drops tomorrow, someone might accuse you of knowing him, of plotting. That kind of thing gets you killed faster than frostbite. You pass under a gate that pretends to be a structure but mostly just leans on its own rotting timbers. There's barbed wire, sure, but that's almost a formality. No one escapes the Gulag, not because of fences, but because everything beyond them wants to kill you faster than the guards do. Forest, snow, hunger, wolves, and time. Oh, and the guards. Can't forget them. At the processing hut, the warmth is insulting, just enough to sting your cheeks as the frost starts to melt. Inside, you're met by a man in a grey coat and a hat that might have once been luxurious. Fur now matted, greasy with years. His smile is empty, bureaucratic. You could be a loaf of bread or a defective nail. His clipboard doesn't care. You're told to strip everything. Your coat, boots, even the ragged underclothes you've clung to. They toss you a replacement pile. Uniform would be generous. It's a sackcloth tunic, pants that itch like nettles, and boots with holes that look suspiciously like rat bites. You get a number, not a name, just a sequence to be shouted at roll call and etched into your identity like a curse. Then comes the haircut. All of it gone. Your hair, your beard, your dignity. The man shaving you doesn't speak. He hums softly, a song you recognise, a lullaby. It's the kind of moment that might have been tender, but here it's just haunting, outside again. Your skin prickles against the cold, even layered in this new excuse for clothing. The sun is up but offers no warmth. It hangs like a pale ghost, barely more than a suggestion. Your march past rows of wooden barracks, half buried in snowdrifts, the windows caked in frost. Smoke curls from broken chimneys. It smells like wet wood and old sorrow. You wonder what crimes these people committed. Some are political, writers, teachers, people who read the wrong book or made a sarcastic joke about the wrong general. Others are criminals, sure, murderers, thieves. But in here, the lines blur quickly. Everyone wears the same outfit. Everyone eats the same grey gruel. Everyone shivers. You're taken to your assigned barracks, a long low building that groans in the wind. Inside it's dim and heavy with breath and sweat and mould. Bunks stacked 3 high. You're lucky. You get the middle one. Top bunks are warmer but dangerous. Bottom ones are damp. The middle is the sweet spot, if you can call anything sweet here. Someone grunts as you slide in. No one introduces themselves. They just stare. Some with suspicion, some with pity. One man just looks straight through you, as if you're not really there. And maybe you're not. Not the version of you that existed before the trial, before the accusation, before they decided you'd be more useful frozen in a labour camp than walking around freely with thoughts and opinions. That night, you don't sleep. Not really. You doze, jerk awake, doze again. Your body aches from travel. Your stomach twists from the thin soup they call dinner. Your mind won't shut up. It keeps replaying your last day of freedom, the face of the neighbour who denounced you, the sound of your wife crying, the way the train door slammed shut behind you like the lid of a coffin. And just before the greyest sliver of morning arrives, you hear it. A scream. Somewhere outside. Long, echoing, then cut short. Nobody moves, nobody speaks. It's not part of roll call, it's just life. Tomorrow you work. You wake up before the sun, though that's not saying much. There's barely a sun out here. Just a bruised sky slowly bleeding into a colour that could generously be called dawn. Your breath puffs out in white clouds, and your face is numb where it pressed against your sleeve during the few hours of sleep you managed to steal. Someone kicks the bunk post. It's time. You don't get to brush your teeth, you don't get to stretch or even use the toilet in peace. A guard's already yelling outside. Sharp, clipped syllables in Russian, the kind of voice trained more to bark than speak. You slide out of the bunk and into the cold, the wooden floor biting your bare feet through threadbare socks. Outside, there's no real line for roll call, just a mass of shivering bodies packed into a yard like expired meat. You try to stand still, but your legs tremble, whether from cold or fear or fatigue. You can't tell anymore. You've been here less than 24 hours. Somehow it already feels like you've been here for years. Roll call is a ritual, a terrible, pointless ritual. The guards count you, then recount, then accuse you of hiding someone, then count again. It can take hours, all while the wind slices through your clothes like you're wearing tissue paper. If someone collapses during the count, the guards ignore them. If they're lucky, another prisoner will prop them back up. If they're not, they'll get dragged out of line and dealt with later. The worst part? No talking, no moving. You stand there, your feet going from cold to numb to something beyond numb. You try wiggling your toes just to prove you still have them. The guy next to you mutters something under his breath in a language you don't understand. Maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. Who knows anymore? A few yards over, a young prisoner sneezes. Just a sneeze. Harmless. But it draws the attention of a guard. The man strides over, calm and smiling in that way that makes your stomach tighten. Without a word, he slaps the prisoner across the face, then again, and again. The prisoner doesn't fight back. You'd think it's cowardice, but it's not. He knows the rules. Fighting back means punishment block, or worse. The historical records are clear on this. Roll calls in Gulag camps were designed less to count people and more to break them. Morning roll calls could last up to 3 hours, especially during winter. They were also public theatre, where the guards reasserted dominance and Zeks were reminded that they were nothing. Some historians argue this ritual served a psychological purpose. It dissolved time, turned days into a blur of repetition. Others argue it was just cruelty, no deeper purpose, just the arbitrary sadism of a system addicted to control. After the final number is approved, after at least 3 recounts and a brief verbal humiliation for someone who forgot to take off their cap, you're herded toward the work sheds, or trucks, if you're lucky. But this camp doesn't seem to have many of those. First you pass through search. It's quick but degrading. A guard checks your boots and your pockets, making sure you're not smuggling anything from the barracks. Not that you have anything worth hiding. They take a metal spoon from one guy, accusing him of sharpening it. He swears he wasn't. Doesn't matter. They drag him off anyway. You're not assigned to a workshop or a kitchen. You're on common labour today, which means physical work outside the camp perimeter. A shovel is shoved into your hands, a rusted spade with a splintered handle and no loyalty. There are no safety instructions, no goals, just dig. And so you dig. What are you digging for? Doesn't matter. Could be a ditch, could be a drainage line, could be nothing at all. That's another fun thing about the worst camps in the Gulag system. Sometimes the work was deliberately meaningless. Prisoners were ordered to move piles of rocks from one place to another, and then back again the next day. It wasn't about productivity. It was about control, dehumanization. Make someone dig a trench for 12 hours in minus 30-degree weather, and then fill it in the next day, and you're not just breaking their back, you're breaking their mind. The man to your left is older, probably in his 50s. He works with the resigned rhythm of someone who's done this for years. He doesn't speak, just digs. You notice he keeps his mouth covered with a strip of cloth. Smart. Cuts the wind. You try to do the same with your sleeve, but it's stiff with ice. To your right, a younger man isn't keeping up. His shovel scrapes pathetically at the frozen earth, barely making a dent. A guard notices. He saunters over, slow, like a cat stalking a limping bird. And just like that, the man is gone. Dragged off mid-shift, shovel left twitching in the snow like it hasn't figured out its wielder is missing. You keep digging. You don't ask where he went. Nobody does. One quirky detail historians have noted. Some prisoners actually sang while they worked. Not out of joy, obviously, but as a way to set a rhythm, to pretend they were somewhere else. Songs from childhood, or old folk tunes, or even nonsense chants made up on the spot. It wasn't allowed, but sometimes the guards tolerated it, if only because it helped get the work done faster. Not here, though. Not in this camp. Here, even humming could cost you a rib. You feel the blisters forming beneath your gloves, if you can call these stitched-together rags gloves. Your arms burn, your knees ache, and your spine feels like it's been turned into a marionette string. You're not just sore, you're hollow, like the digging is pulling something out of you that won't grow back. Nah! By the time you march back to camp, it's late afternoon. You're barely walking, more like drifting forward on autopilot, shovel over your shoulder like a cross. You pass another group coming back from a different work site. One man is missing a boot. Just one. His foot is wrapped in cloth stained brown and red. You know that look. He's not going to last the week. There's no hot meal waiting, just a bowl of warm grey liquid with something floating in it. Potato? Rat meat? Your stomach doesn't care. You gulp it down, licking the spoon like it's dessert. The taste? Vaguely earthy, like licking the floor of a barn after a rainstorm. And then it's evening again. The cycle resets. Your muscles throb as you climb back into your bunk, the middle tier a cold cradle. Someone down below is snoring. Someone up top is coughing, deep, chesty and bad. You cover your ears with your sleeves, you try to sleep, you don't dream, at least not yet. By your third day in the camp, it's official. Your uniform is now an ecosystem. The socks that once had holes are now nothing but holes loosely held together by thread. Your pants feel stiff with frozen sweat, and your shirt, if you can call it that, is half frozen to your back when you wake up, forcing you to peel it off with a soft hiss and a few layers of skin. Today is colder, or maybe you're just weaker. It's hard to tell. The mornings blur together, and the roll call, that cruel ceremony out in the frost, lasts even longer today because someone died in the night, and nobody wants to admit it. His bunkmates propped him up at the head of the line, pretending he was still breathing. You watch the guards' faces when they realise. There's no real shock, just annoyance. One orders the corpse dragged out of the line like a sack of flour. Someone gets hit anyway, for wasting time. Afterwards, you shuffle toward a storage shed. It's clothing issue day. Sounds good, right? Like maybe you'll get something warmer. But no, clothing issue in the Gulag isn't about better. It's about redistribution. You give up your current gear and in exchange you get someone else's cast-offs. Possibly from the guy who just died. Probably not washed. They line you up like livestock and strip you down to your underwear. Your skin flashes in the open air, your knees knocking together like gossiping old ladies. A guard throws you a bundle. You catch it against your chest. It's heavier than expected, stiff, and soaked through in one corner. You unfold it. Jacket, 2 sizes too big, stuffed with mystery lint. Pants, stained, threadbare at the seat. Boots, mismatched, one has no sole. There's a brief desperate barter behind the shed. One prisoner offers his boots for yours. The logic. His have 2 left feet, yours are at least different sizes. It's not about comfort, it's about survival. Everything in this camp is a trade. You give up warmth for silence, dignity for calories, boots for boots. You slide into your new uniform. It smells like mildew and something else. Something sweet and rotting, like old meat left in the sun. You try not to think about it. Not about who wore it last. Not about whether they made it out. A brief historical note. The Soviet camps were not equipped to clothe the vast number of prisoners cycling through. In the worst locations, especially places like Kolyma, prisoners often wore whatever was available, regardless of size, gender or condition. Women might get men's uniforms. Men wore civilian coats riddled with bullet holes. There were no seasonal outfits. You were lucky to get boots at all. Some camps recycled uniforms from the dead, though they usually called it requisitioning. Your gloves are long gone, so you wrap strips of cloth around your fingers, mummy style. The cold still seeps through, but at least your skin doesn't stick to the shovel anymore. The guards don't care about what you're wearing. As long as you show up for work and don't collapse too soon, you're good enough. They joke among themselves in rough Russian, making cracks about the Zek's new fashion line. One calls it Paris 1938. The others laugh. You get assigned to firewood duty. It sounds like a break, until you realise it means chopping logs for the camp's use. Not for your barracks, of course. The guards' buildings get the best wood. The officer's bathhouse, that gets enough firewood to run a sauna. You? You'll be lucky if a few splinters make it to your stove. The axe you're handed is older than you. The blade is chipped. The handle is worn smooth from years of desperation. You raise it over your head and bring it down into a log, feeling the jolt echo through your elbows. Chop, lift, chop. You're not trying to make neat firewood. You're just trying to survive the next hour without falling over. A man nearby talks while he chops. Not to anyone, just to the air. Something about poetry. He's reciting Pushkin, or trying to anyway. His teeth chatter in between lines. You catch a fragment. Frost and sun. A wonderful day. He laughs at that. A soft, bitter wheeze. Here's the quirky part. Despite the brutality, some Zeks developed strange pride in their rags. Some learned how to stitch bits of cloth into patterns. Not decorative, no one's showing off, but functional. A flap here to cover the knees. A loop there for a spoon. You see one guy with a hat stitched from old sleeves. It's almost elegant. Almost. A debate circles around the yard. Not out loud, of course, but in muttered whispers and glances. Should you hoard what warmth you can, even if it means stealing from the weak? Or do you share your extras, help the new guys, protect the sick? The camp tests every moral you thought you had. One man offers you a scarf, dirty but thick. You hesitate. Why would he give it? What does he want? Kindness here is rare, and when it shows up, it feels suspicious. You accept it anyway. He says nothing, just nods. Maybe he remembers his first week. Maybe he's already dying and doesn't need it anymore. You don't ask. The day crawls by, chopping, splinters, shivering. You nick your hand once, a shallow cut, but it bleeds like you've been stabbed. Your blood's thinner now, weaker. You wrap it with more cloth and nobody notices. Good. If you end up in the infirmary, there's a decent chance you won't come back. At dinner, the stew is somehow even thinner than before. No bread tonight. Supplies must be low. A rumour goes around that a shipment of coats was stolen before reaching the camp. Some say the guards sold them on the black market. Others say there never was a shipment. Doesn't matter. You don't get a coat. Back in the barracks, you sit on your bunk and finally examine your boots properly. One has a lining made from newspaper, faded Cyrillic print stuck to the inside like old wallpaper. You squint. An article about collective farming. The headline is barely readable. You wonder who read it before it became insulation. Above you, someone's carving something into the wooden bunk slat. You don't ask what. Maybe it's a name. Maybe it's a prayer. Maybe it's just a tally of days, scratched over and over until the numbers blur together. You lie back, arms crossed over your chest to preserve heat. Your uniform rustles against you, heavy and stiff. It offers no comfort. Just a barrier between you and the cold, between you and the memories of your old life, your real clothes, your real bed, the sound of your own name spoken with warmth. Out here you wear frost like a second skin, and no one notices when it starts to sink into your bones. There's a sound that wakes you before the guards do, a kind of dry, muffled wheeze, like someone trying to cough through a mouthful of snow. You open your eyes and glance up. The guy in the top bunk is having a moment, not a loud one. No gasping or flailing, just this weird stillness, like he's trying to politely die without making a fuss. No one moves to help. You don't either. That's the rule, remember? Don't get involved. You're not a hero. You're just a body trying not to become another one. Eventually the wheezing stops, and that's it. He's gone. But there's no time to process it. The guards are already outside, blowing whistles and rattling batons against the barracks walls like toddlers with tin toys. You swing your feet off the bunk, your breath already clouding. It's colder today. How is that even possible? Outside, your lungs sting when you breathe. The roll call yard is covered in powdery snow, freshly fallen and deceptively soft, until you realise it's covering a layer of icy mud. People stumble. Someone falls. The guards laugh. The guards always laugh. Roll call today is faster. A good sign? Not really. It means they're short-staffed or bored, and that can go either way. They might be lazy with supervision, or they might be looking for something to do later, something involving punishment for infractions both real and imagined. After the count, you're assigned to a new detail. They hand you a metal bucket and a short-handled broom. A guard points to the centre of the camp. Latrines! There it is. You've officially reached the bottom. Cleaning duty in the camp's communal toilets. These aren't toilets like the one back home that you used to sit on while reading magazines. These are trenches. Shallow pits with planks stretched across them and a stench that's not even funny. It's chemical warfare. The wooden shelter over the trench does nothing to contain the smell. In fact, it seems to amplify it, like a grotesque little sauna of human decay. You try to breathe through your mouth, but even that doesn't help. The air is thick with ammonia, rot, and something far worse. Something ancient. Something that smells like all the secrets of a sick civilization, concentrated into one bubbling hole in the ground. And your job is to sweep it. Literally. You sweep the plank floors, you collect the waste buckets from the guard shacks. Oh yes, the guards have private ones. And you dump them into the central pit. You rinse the buckets with water so cold it burns. Then you do it again, and again, until your fingers go stiff and your eyes stop noticing the smell. This, by the way, is what the camp called light duty. You'd think no one would fight for this job, but they do. It's one of the few assignments that keeps you inside the perimeter fence, close to shelter. No tundra, no rock piles, just your hands in someone else's filth instead of your whole body frozen into the landscape. It's a trade-off you didn't expect to make, but here you are, elbow deep in human waste and grateful for it. One of the other latrine workers is a woman. She doesn't look at you, and you don't look at her. That's not just politeness, it's strategy. Conversations between male and female prisoners are forbidden, or at least punished as fraternization, which is ironic considering what actually happens to many women in these camps. She works quickly, methodically, eyes down, lips pressed tight. Her face is swollen. Cold, or infection, maybe both. You hear her mutter something, almost like a song. You can't make out the words. Historical note? Women made up a significant minority in the Gulag system. In the worst camps, they weren't given any special protection or treatment. If anything, they had it worse. They performed the same brutal labour, suffered the same starvation, and were often targets for abuse by guards and prisoners alike. Some were even assigned to comfort stations for officers. Others used relationships, if you can call them that, to secure better food or protection, a kind of transactional survival. Your fellow cleaner? She doesn't strike you as someone who's made any such arrangement. She's just surviving minute by minute like everyone else. Halfway through your shift, a guard strolls over to the latrine pit with a cigarette pinched between two fingers and a smile that makes your stomach curdle. He leans against the post and watches you work. Doesn't say anything for a long time, and then softly, "You missed a spot." He doesn't laugh. That would make it a joke. He just walks away. You don't say anything. You just scrub harder. You don't want to end up on his list. After the shift, you're allowed to rinse off in a utility shed. The water's pumped from a frozen stream and it comes out like knives. There's no soap. You rub your hands raw and try to tell yourself you feel cleaner. You don't. Back at the barracks, you get soup. It's unusually warm tonight. A good sign? Maybe. Or maybe they're trying to mask the fact that the meat in it is off. You eat it anyway because your body's not picky anymore. It wants calories. Anything. Your stomach's a cave. You could feed it stones and it would say thank you. You sit near the stove, well, the iron box they call a stove. Someone's managed to light a fire. Tiny flames lick the dry wood, just enough heat to warm your knees if you sit very still. But there are 15 of you and only a sliver of firelight. Someone reaches in front of you and gets elbowed. A quick scuffle starts. It ends with one man getting pushed into the ashes. No one laughs. He just picks himself up, dusts off, and backs away from the heat. He won't try again tonight. In a corner of the room, a man sings very softly. It's not a real song, more like a loop of syllables. You recognize one word, mama. You look over. He's young. Too young to be here. His eyes are red. He sings like he's forgotten how not to. You lie down without undressing. No one undresses here. Clothes are all you've got. Your bed stinks. You stink. Everyone stinks. It's the kind of odour that's layered. Sweat, urine, blood, mould, ash. But somehow you're starting not to notice. That might scare you if you still had room for fear. You stare up at the bunk slats above you. There's a name carved into the wood. A real name. Not a number. Not a slogan. A full, human name. Someone scratched it in with a nail or maybe a spoon. You reach up and trace the letters with your fingers. It's not your name, but for a second, it could be. You dream of shovels. Not in a poetic way. Not metaphorically. Just the real, heavy kind. The ones with splintered handles and rusted blades. The kind that throb your shoulders into jelly. And when you wake, you realise it's not a dream. Because there it is, leaning against the barracks wall, waiting, like a loyal pet from a horror movie. Today you're on excavation duty. That's the actual word the guard uses, excavatsiya. And somehow it sounds worse in Russian, more official. Like someone in an office 1,000 kilometres away decided that today you'll spend 12 hours trying to dig holes into the permafrost. You grab your shovel. It's the same one as before, or it could be. It's not like they keep records of who used what. You file into the work column, no talking, just the shuffling of boots and the crunch of frost underfoot. The camp gate yawns open. You pass through it like a line of condemned men headed toward a slow-motion execution. The worksite is a patch of frozen ground surrounded by fir trees that look like they've given up on life. The snow here is deeper, untouched, and blinding in the weak morning light. A gust of wind slices through your coat and cuts across your cheeks like razors. The ground is hard. Of course it is. You chip at it, not dig. The shovel scrapes uselessly, ringing out like a broken bell. You could be trying to dig through metal. You put your weight into it, throw your shoulder down, and the tip finally cracks a layer of ice. Small victory. You keep going. Next to you is an older man with a face like boiled leather. He doesn't speak, just works. You can tell he's done this before. He has a rhythm. Lift, chip, pause, breathe. Over and over, like his body knows the steps, even if his mind's gone somewhere else. Eventually you catch the rhythm too, or maybe your body just stops resisting. It's not thinking anymore, it's just obeying. That's how they get you. They wear down the part of you that asks why. You're not told what you're digging, a foundation, a drainage trench, a grave. Could be anything. Could be all three. Some camps didn't bother telling the prisoners what the work was for, and some invented tasks just to keep the bodies moving. The purpose wasn't production. It was punishment disguised as labour. A guard patrols the edge of the work zone. He's got a rifle and a cigarette, and he looks incredibly bored. Every once in a while he yells at someone, usually for not digging fast enough. Once he hits a man across the back with the butt of his gun. No warning. The man groans and doubles over. The guard doesn't care. Here's something weird. The man who gets hit says, "Thank you." Not sarcastically. Sincerely. It's a trick. You've seen it before already. Some prisoners try to stay invisible by being overly obedient, smiling when they're beaten, complimenting the guards, volunteering for the worst tasks. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it buys you a few extra calories or a slightly warmer post. That prisoner gets no reward. He just gets back to work. Your fingers are cramping by noon. You flex them, but they feel more like twigs than bones. The cold has settled into your joints like old debt. You can't even tell if your toes are still there. Your boots stopped insulating hours ago. Lunch break comes with no warning, just a barked order. You drop your shovel and sit on a log that someone probably died on last week. A bucket of soup makes its way down the line. It's thick today. Relatively. There are actual chunks in it. A slice of turnip. A smear of meat. Maybe. You savour it like it's your last meal because it might be. Across from you, a group of prisoners is whispering. You can't hear much, but the word pobeg stands out. Escape. They're not serious. At least you don't think they are. The tone is more like a joke than a plan. Still, the idea sticks in your brain. Could you escape? Let's walk through it. First, you'd have to get past the guards, armed, bored, quick to shoot. Then past the dogs, hungry, angry, fast. Then you'd be in the forest, with no food, no map, no sense of where civilization is. Assuming you don't freeze to death in the first 12 hours, you'd still have to avoid villages because if a local sees you, they'll turn you in for a few rubles or a loaf of bread. If you make it to a city, what then? No ID, no money, your face plastered on every security bulletin. Escaping from a gulag was theoretically possible. A few did it, but they were outliers. Myths, almost. The more you think about it, the more it feels like trying to walk off the edge of the world. After the break, it's back to digging. The hole hasn't gotten much deeper, maybe a foot. The frost is winning. You swap shovels with another prisoner whose blade has snapped. He gives you a nod, barely a flick of the chin. That counts as a whole conversation here. By late afternoon, your vision blurs. You've gone from cold to numb to dizzy. You try not to fall over, because if you do, the guards might assume you're faking it. Faking gets you punished. You grip the shovel tighter and will yourself not to drop. Here's the scholarly debate for today. Historians can't agree on how much of the work done in camps like these actually contributed to the Soviet economy. Some argue that Gulag labour helped build major infrastructure, roads, canals, mining towns. Others insist it was wildly inefficient and often pointless. What's clear is that it was cheap, disposable. That was the point. By the end of the day, your hands are shredded. The cuts are minor, but they sting like fire. Infection is always lurking. You don't think about that, though. You're too tired to think. You follow the line of prisoners back to the camp like a ghost. Dinner is more soup. You eat it in silence, staring into the bowl like it might tell you a secret. It doesn't. Later you sit by the stove, now burning lower, and watch the shadows stretch across the walls. Someone hums. Again. You don't know the song, but it's soft and low and somehow reminds you of home. It aches in your chest. In the bunk you press your face into your coat sleeve, trying to catch a trace of warmth, a trace of self. The shovel's still out there in the yard, waiting. Tomorrow it will be in your hands again. You dream of digging, but this time the hole never ends. It just gets deeper, darker, and the walls begin to close in. Your stomach wakes you before the guards do. It growls like a wounded animal, curled up and chewing its own tail. Hunger in the Gulag isn't just a feeling, it's a permanent roommate. Loud, cranky, and always sleeping in your bed. You try to ignore it, but it's no use. The ache is baked into your bones. Outside, the whistle shrieks. You sit up too fast and the world tilts sideways. That's new. Your vision goes momentarily black at the edges like someone dimmed the lights. It passes. Probably just low blood sugar, or anemia, or scurvy. Honestly, pick your poison. You drag yourself out of bed, boots flopping loosely around your ankles. The stuffing inside them, bits of newspaper and sock scraps, has compacted into something harder than leather. You think you feel one of your toenails starting to go black. You'll deal with that later. Maybe. Roll call comes with a nasty twist today. They've added what the prisoners call the bonus. After standing still in the yard for an hour, someone from the administration shows up. Not a guard, but a suit. Probably here for an inspection, maybe to report back to the regional office that things are running smoothly. So, of course, now you have to pretend. This is where the Hunger Games really begin. The guards order everyone to stand straighter, to smile, to show morale, as if anyone here remembers what that word means. A few of the more seasoned prisoners know how to do the dance, laugh when you're told, nod enthusiastically at stupid slogans, say things like, "Work makes us strong," without choking on the irony. The inspector gives a little speech about the great re-education effort, about productive labour. You resist the urge to roll your eyes, mostly because someone behind you does, and earns a baton across the back for their trouble. The inspector doesn't even blink. Afterwards, you're handed your daily ration. Today's bread chunk is about the size of a deck of cards and just as dense. It's black, chewy, and smells faintly of vinegar. That's actually a good day. Some days it smells like sawdust. Because it probably is. The soup, if you can call it that, is water with a hint of cabbage and one confused, overboiled bean floating on top like a survivor from a shipwreck. You eat it all, every drop, every crumb. You lick your spoon, you lick your fingers, you even consider licking the inside of the bowl, but someone else already did. Food in the Gulag is currency, religion, obsession. You hear Zeks whisper about calories like stock traders whisper about market swings. They cut 50 grams today. The bread's thinner. They're saving meat for the guards again. There's a black market too, of course. Everything here has value. A crust of bread might get you an extra pair of socks. A spoonful of sugar? That's like gold. People hoard their food, trade it, steal it, guard it like dragons. You've heard of prisoners hiding bread in their boots, or stitching pockets into their coats just to tuck away a few extra grams. One guy in your barracks, a lanky Ukrainian with wild eyes and no remaining teeth, brags about his skills, says he can get anything, flour, dried fish, even salt. He won't tell you how. Maybe he bribes the kitchen crew. Maybe he's just lying to feel powerful. Either way, you don't ask for favours. cadets in this place are dangerous. Your hunger makes you stupid, slow. That's how they like it. Starved prisoners don't rebel. They don't organize. They barely move. But here's a strange little historical wrinkle. Even in the worst camps, there were cases of clever Zeks pulling off culinary miracles. You hear whispers of men fermenting prison bread into alcohol. They'd hide the mixture under the floorboards, let it rot just right, then drink it in secret celebrations. Imagine getting drunk in a gulag. Imagine choosing to feel more terrible. There's a guy you've seen, thin, twitchy, maybe a former cook. He talks in riddles, but he once described how to make a gulag cake. His recipe? 3 spoonfuls of flour, a pinch of sawdust, melted snow, and mashed turnip. Baked on a hot shovel over a stove, served with a side of fantasy. No one's tried it yet, but just talking about it brings a weird kind of warmth. After lunch, the guards hand you a shovel again. Of course, today you're digging a drainage trench outside the camp. The frost isn't as bad, but the wind has picked up, cutting through your sleeves and stinging your face raw. Every time you lean into the shovel, your stomach complains. Not in words, but in twitches and cramps and that hollow pressure that says, you're eating yourself now. You drop your shovel once, by accident. Your fingers just let go. A guard sees. He wanders over, slow. You brace. But this time, he doesn't hit you. He just picks up the shovel, hands it back and says, don't die yet. We still need the hole. Then he walks away, whistling a tune that sounds like something from a children's cartoon. Later, after work, you return to the barracks with the same dragging shuffle as everyone else. You pass someone vomiting in the snow. You don't stop to check if they're okay. That's the other rule here. You never stop walking. Inside, the air smells like sweat, mould, and something sour. Someone's tried boiling their foot rags over the stove again. Steam rises from a rusty pot, and the scent is unforgettable. Still, it's warm. You take your seat by the wall and try to stay awake long enough for dinner. It's not much different. More soup, more black bread. You break the crust slowly, savouring each bite, chewing until your jaw aches, pretending it's cake, pretending it's meat, pretending. Some guys in the corner are whispering again, more escape talk. But tonight it's not about running, it's about food. Rumour is there's a stash somewhere under the laundry shed, a forgotten cache from a former prisoner, dried fish maybe, a tin of meat. No one knows if it's real, but already you feel yourself leaning toward belief, not because it's likely, just because it's something. Before bed, one of the old prisoners, he looks like a living fossil, starts reciting a menu, out loud, not for anyone, just for himself. Black bread, salted butter, herring with onion, hot borscht. He closes his eyes as he speaks, swaying slightly. You can see the dishes, smell them, feel the warmth of a kitchen that doesn't exist. Another prisoner shouts at him to shut up, says it hurts too much. A third tells them both to shut up, says he can't remember what food tasted like and doesn't want to be reminded. You lie back and stare at the ceiling, where a spider's web glitters faintly in the low firelight. Your stomach growls again. The dream tonight, it's about a loaf of rye bread the size of your head. You eat and eat, but it never gets smaller. It never fills you. You wake up chewing your blanket. You get woken up by a rat. No, not a metaphorical rat. An actual, living, fur-covered creature scurrying across your chest like it owns the place. You jolt upright, your heart in your throat, and it disappears somewhere into the rafters. No one else even reacts. You sit there, breathing hard, while the rest of the barracks remains a symphony of snoring, coughing, and one guy muttering nonsense in his sleep. You lie back down slowly. The straw-stuffed mattress crunches beneath you, itchy and half-frozen. The rat was just hungry, same as you. When the guards come shouting for roll call, you're already half awake, still thinking about the rat. Not angry, envious. It's probably warm, probably finds more to eat in the garbage pits than you do at the dinner table. You shuffle out into the yard, boots squelching through half-thawed snow. Today it's slush. Not quite water, not quite ice. Your socks soak instantly. That's going to be fun later. Roll call, again. You've lost track of how many you've endured. 100. More? The guards shout, the guards miscount, someone sneezes and gets slapped. It's the usual routine. A man collapses. He's helped up by 2 others. No one snitches. Solidarity is selective. But when someone's about to fall out of the count and take the rest of you with him, teamwork suddenly blooms like a weed. Afterwards, you get your assignment, tool maintenance. It sounds like a joke. But no, today, instead of swinging the tools, you're expected to clean, sharpen and organise them. Axes, saws, hammers, crowbars, some broken, most rusted. The camp maintains just enough tools to keep the labour going, but they're rarely repaired unless someone's been singled out for light duty. That's you today, which makes you suspicious. The tool shed is on the far side of the camp near the women's barracks. You don't go near that section, but you see it from a distance. There's a wall between your world and theirs, literally and figuratively. The guards patrol that wall a little too eagerly. Today you're working with a crew of 5. 2 politicals, a criminal, one guy you're pretty sure used to be a doctor, and a tall, broad man with tattoos crawling up his neck like ivy. You try not to stare, but one of the tattoos catches your eye. A star, inked into the skin just below his jaw. Crude lines, blackened with soot. You've heard about the prison tattoos. Every shape means something. Some of it's code, some is rank, some is survival. Tattoo culture in the Soviet camps is its own underground language. A star on the shoulder, high-ranking criminal, eyes on the chest. I'm always watching. A church dome with crosses, number of years served. But some tattoos are less coded, more desperate. You once saw a man with a spoon inked on his forearm. Just a spoon. Maybe it meant hunger. Maybe it was just what he missed most. The guy with the neck star sees you looking. He smiles. Not in a friendly way. More like a wolf acknowledging a rabbit. You nod. Look away. That's the safest response. Acknowledge, but never challenge. You get to work on the tools. It's tedious. Repetitive. Kind of perfect, actually. You scrub rust off old blades using sand and a rag. The motion's rhythmic. Your mind drifts. You start wondering about your bunkmates, where they came from, what they did, if they did anything at all. Some tell stories, some never speak. One man claims he used to be a famous actor in Moscow, says he was arrested for making a joke about Stalin's moustache. Could be true, could be made up. In here, truth is fluid, bent by time, cold, and the need to believe you were once something else. The criminal next to you, a wiry man with one ear and a constant sniffle, offers to trade a sharpened file for a cigarette. You don't have cigarettes. You don't even know where people get them anymore. He shrugs and starts using the file to carve something into the handle of a hammer. No one stops him. You've heard of tools being turned into weapons, but in this camp it's usually the guards doing the turning. A guard steps into the shed at one point, just stands there watching, not saying anything. His coat's new, his boots polished, his eyes dead. You all keep working. No one meets his gaze. It's like a game. If you don't acknowledge the predator, maybe it won't pounce. Eventually he leaves. The air feels less poisoned after he's gone. You learn something interesting while cleaning a saw. Blood rusts faster than water. The teeth are stained reddish-brown, the corrosion deep in the grooves. You run your fingers over them carefully, wondering whose blood it was. Prisoner? Animal? Does it matter? The doctor-looking guy sees you staring. He just says, "Don't think too much. It'll kill you faster than cold." Then he goes back to scraping his shovel head clean. At lunch you get fish. That sounds exciting until you see it. One fillet, bones and all, floating in watery broth. It smells like regret. Still, it's protein. You eat it slowly, pulling the tiny bones out one by one, arranging them on your bread crust like art. Across the room a fight breaks out. 2 prisoners over a slice of bread, no surprise there. But what's interesting is how fast the others move in. Not to break it up, to steal what falls. Fights are chaotic, they blur the rules. In that 10-second window you can grab things you'd never get otherwise. A sock, a spoon, half a biscuit. Survival is fast and dirty. The guards arrive late. They don't care about the cause, just the noise. Both fighters are dragged out, probably to the punishment cell. You don't want to think about that place. In the afternoon you finish your shift and head back to the barracks early. That's when you finally meet him, your bunkmate from the bottom tier. He's been sick for days, just a lump in the shadows, but today he sits up. Thin, ghost white, with eyes like puddles that haven't frozen yet. He coughs into a rag and folds it neatly in his lap like a gentleman. He speaks in a low, careful voice. "You're new." "What do they get you for?" You hesitate. You've never been sure how to answer that. You tell him the truth. "They said I was a saboteur, that I disrupted the factory quota." He nods slowly. "Mine was poetry." You glance at him. "Seriously?" Wrote a poem about a bird. Too free, apparently. You both laugh, quietly. It's the first laugh you've had in days, maybe weeks. He coughs again, winces. He doesn't ask your name. You don't ask his. That's not how things work here. But somehow, you feel better knowing someone beneath your bunk is still alive. That night you carve a small mark into your bedpost. Not for the number of days, who's counting, just a mark. A reminder, you made it through another one. There's something new in the air this morning. Tension. It hangs heavier than the frost. Not fear exactly, more like static. Like everyone's waiting for the inevitable zap of a finger on metal. You feel it in the glances, in the way people fumble more than usual getting dressed, in how even the guards are unusually quiet during roll call. Then you see why. A new officer has arrived. You spot him immediately. He's not wearing the usual grey-green. His coat is cleaner, tailored, tall boots, polished black. He moves through the yard like he owns the weather. The other guards straighten their spines when he walks by. Not out of respect. Fear. You know this type. Every camp has one eventually. The sadist. The guy who didn't just fall into power, he chose it. He wanted it. Cultivated it. The guards might beat you because they're tired or lazy or bored, but this guy, he'll beat you because it makes his day better. Your barracks mate, the poetry guy, mutters as he zips his coat. New broom sweeps clean, until it's soaked in blood. You don't ask how he knows that. You just file it away under useful ominous sayings. The new officer gives a speech later. It's not addressed to you directly. He's talking to the guards, but he makes no effort to keep his voice down. He walks past work crews, boots crunching snow, eyes behind mirrored glasses. I want order, he says. I want quotas met. No more laziness. No more soft punishments. This is not a holiday resort. This is not a school. This is the people's hammer, and I will swing it. And just like that, the camp gets colder. You're assigned to gravel hauling today. A back-breaking, stupid job where you fill sacks with stones from one pile, carry them across the yard, and dump them into another pile. That's it. No reason, no goal, just movement. Someone once told you, when the work stops making sense, that's when they start winning. You're beginning to understand. The guards are more alert today, watching. You can feel eyes crawling across your neck every time you stop to catch your breath. The new officer walks the perimeter with a cane, not for support, just to tap it ominously against things. Railings, boots, rib cages. A man ahead of you drops his sack. His knees buckle. He's old, maybe 60, maybe older. It's hard to tell with the way time eats faces out here. The guard moves fast, yanks him to his feet, then cracks the cane across his back. Once, twice, hard. No shouting, no performance, just punishment as punctuation. The man groans but doesn't scream. That's the only control he has left, not giving them the sound they want. The officer nods once, approves, walks on. You keep your head down and carry the next sack like it's full of feathers, even though it's cutting into your shoulders like barbed wire. In the barracks that night, the mood is a dull grey. Nobody talks much. Even the chess players, the ones who scratch pieces into the floor with charcoal, have stopped mid-game. Someone's missing from the top bunk. You don't ask who. You just register the emptiness. One of the tattooed prisoners, a thick-necked man with a snake coiled around his bicep, leans against the stove and tells a story. It's more of a warning about a previous camp he was in, where an officer like this one came and cleaned house. Dozens disappeared. Not for escape attempts, not for rule breaking, just vanished. He didn't need a reason, the man says, just wanted space. Too many mouths, less mess. The poetry guy chuckles softly from his bunk. He probably got promoted. And here's where it gets historical. Records show that sadistic officers were often rewarded, not for cruelty directly, but for results. Higher work quotas, fewer problems, good behaviour reports. Even if the bodies were stacking up behind the barracks, if the papers looked good, the system was happy. Some survivors claimed the worst camps, like Kolyma, Vorkuta, or Gulag, became showcases for brutal management. They weren't seen as failed institutions. They were models, places where discipline reigned, where re-education happened quickly, or not at all. There's debate, of course. Some scholars argue that Moscow never knew how bad it got, that the worst guards were rogues, anomalies. Others say, no way, they knew, they built it this way. As for you, you've stopped trying to make sense of anything. The system doesn't care if you're guilty. It doesn't care if you're strong or useful or clever. It just wants you quiet, used up, forgettable. You wrap yourself in your coat that night and stay perfectly still, hoping the officer forgets you exist. But he doesn't. The next morning, your name, well, your number, is on the list. Not the good kind, not kitchen duty or tool maintenance. This is the test squad. The guards bark for volunteers for a new procedure. No one volunteers, so they pick 10 of you anyway. You're one of them. They march you to a clearing just outside the camp perimeter. There's a deep trench dug out, fresh. You're told to move logs from one end to the other. That's it, just logs. You don't ask what the trench is for. After hours of log hauling, the officer arrives. He observes. No expression. Then he points to one of the prisoners. Slow! 2 guards walk up and drag the man away. Not roughly, like they're just putting away equipment. You never see him again. This isn't just punishment. It's theatre. The officer is teaching you something. That he can reach you anywhere. That no one is safe. That work speed isn't about productivity. It's about obedience. You carry logs faster. Later, when you return to the camp, there's soup again. Same watery taste. You eat it with shaking hands. Not from cold this time, from fear. You talk to no one that night. The others are quiet too. It's like the barracks itself is trying to hold its breath. You lie in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the trench, about the missing man, about what kind of person you'll be in a week, a month, a year, if you last that long. The poetry guy speaks up from below. I think we're part of a poem now, he says quietly. Something bleak and cold. Maybe they'll call it The 10 Who Dug. You close your eyes. You don't want to be in a poem. You just want to be forgotten. You learn quickly that the worst danger in the Gulag isn't the guards. It's not even the cold, the starvation, or the endless digging. It's trust. Not the lack of it. No, you can manage without friendship. It's having trust that'll kill you. It starts innocently. A whispered joke while hauling gravel. A quiet story over stew. A favour traded for a scrap of bread. Nothing major. Just 2 people being human for a second. Then a day later, you're getting dragged out of bed and accused of planning a rebellion. Because that friend, that human moment, he reported you. Today you see it happen in real time. You're lining up for work detail. Same as always. You're in the middle of the pack, already going numb in your toes, when one of the new arrivals, a scrawny guy with glasses too fogged to be useful, makes a mistake. He leans toward another prisoner, says something too quietly to hear. That alone isn't a crime. But then the man he whispered to steps away fast and waves over a guard. They talk. The scrawny guy is yanked out of line and marched off. No one says anything. You don't look at him. He doesn't look back. This is the reality of camp life. You're always being watched, and not just by guards. Fellow prisoners are the real surveillance system. They're called stukachi, informants, and they come in all flavours. Some are professional snitches, planted by the administration. Others are opportunists, regular zeks trying to curry favour. Trade one lie for a little warmth, a little food, a few days off the work crew. The worst are the ones who believe they're helping. They think they're protecting the order, doing their duty to the state. You start second-guessing everyone. That guy who helped you fix your boot. Maybe he's working his way into your confidence. The woman who passed you an extra crust of bread through the fence yesterday. A setup, maybe. A test. Even silence becomes suspect. Say nothing, and people wonder what you're hiding. It's enough to make your skin itch. In the evening, you end up in the barracks sitting beside a man named Gleb. At least that's what he calls himself. He's got a broad chest, an even broader smile, and this way of leaning in just a little too close when he talks. Like your old friends. He tells you stories. Nothing dramatic. Stories from home, his village, his old job as a warehouse manager. You nod politely, not sure if you should respond. Then he says, "You don't talk much." That's smart. Talking gets people hurt. Still, it's good to know who can be trusted. There it is, the test. You smile thinly and change the subject to soup. He lets it go, for now. You've heard of guys like Gleb. Probably not even his real name. The trick is, he won't report you for nothing. He'll wait. He'll prod. Make you slip. Maybe weeks from now, he'll go to the guards and say you complained about food rations, or you questioned the work assignments, or that you were seen near the fence, and they'll believe him, because they always do. The thing is, some zeks lean into it. They become their own kind of predators. If you can't beat the system, you join it sideways. You weaponize suspicion. Create it. Accuse someone of planning an escape, and suddenly you get his bunk, his boots, his spot next to the stove. One guy in your barracks brags that he removed 3 people this way, never with violence, just whispered lies at the right time. The truth, he says with a shrug, is whatever the guard wants it to be. Historically, the Gulag system relied on this. The administration couldn't keep eyes on everyone, so they made everyone an eye. Prisoners were rewarded for denouncing others. Sometimes they were forced to, threatened with starvation or isolation if they didn't produce a report. The result? A society within the wire held together by fear and betrayal. And once you're accused, it doesn't matter whether it's true, punishment is immediate. You could be put in the isolation cell, have your rations cut, or worse, transferred to a special section of the camp where the labour is lethal and the death rate is unofficially 100%. That night you notice something scratched into your bunk frame. It's faint, easy to miss. 3 letters. NKVD. NKVD, the Soviet secret police, the ones who created this whole nightmare. It might be a joke, or a warning, or a signature. Either way, it makes your skin crawl. You sleep with your boots on, just in case. The next morning, something's changed in the air again. There's no roll call. Instead, you're kept inside. The barracks are locked from the outside. You sit on your bunk, and so does everyone else. Even Gleb looks nervous. Rumour travels fast. One of the guards is missing. Disappeared during the night. Some think he ran. Some think he was killed. No one knows. But now the whole camp is on lockdown. The guards storm through the barracks an hour later, searching, barking, throwing bedding on the floor, kicking over the tiny stove. One guy gets punched in the gut for asking a question. They don't find anything, not in your barracks anyway, but in the one across the yard. They find a knife, a crude one, carved from a shovel handle and sharpened with a nail file. No one claims it. So, they take everyone. All 20 prisoners are lined up, marched to the punishment cells one at a time. Doesn't matter who did it. That's not the point. The punishment isn't about justice. It's about setting an example, creating paranoia, showing that guilt is a group sport. You watch the line disappear into the dark hallway behind the main administration building. You don't hear screams. That's somehow worse. By evening, the camp returns to normal. Roll call is back. You're counted twice, then told to forget what happened. Just another day. But now everyone's watching everyone even more closely. Gleb sidles up to you as you're eating your soup. Funny, huh? Guy probably didn't even get to use that knife. All that effort, and he's the one buried in the snow now. You nod and chew. Later you see a group of prisoners whispering in the corner. You don't know their names, don't want to. They could be planning something, or pretending to plan something to bait a snitch, or pretending to bait a snitch to catch another snitch. You walk away before you get caught in the orbit. In the Gulag, the only safe secret is the one you never even think. You don't hear your name called, you feel it. It's not your real name, of course, just your number shouted like a curse across the icy yard. You're not even at roll call yet, just trudging toward it, boots soaked, eyes barely open. But that number slices through the dawn and finds you like a needle through cloth. You stop, look up. A guard waves you over. You glance around to make sure it's really you. No one else moves. You trudge toward him. Parcel, he says. You blink. What? Mail? Mail? You haven't heard that word in weeks. Maybe months. It hits you like warm water over frozen hands. Pleasant, then sharply painful. Something real from the outside. You half think it's a trick, a test, some cruel psychological experiment. But no. He hands you a box, small, wrapped in paper so thin it's gone soft with moisture. There's no return address. Just your name, or rather your prison number and unit code, written in thick pencil. You don't even say thank you, just nod and take it. You're not allowed to open it right there. That's against the rules. Anything from the outside must be inspected, which means you carry it, unopened, all through roll call and to your work site. The others see it and glance sideways. You can feel the heat of their envy, their curiosity, their hunger. They don't ask questions, that would be too obvious. But you can tell they're guessing. A wife? A mother? A friend who still remembers you exist? And just like that, you're visible again. Dangerous. The inspection happens during lunch. A squat, beady-eyed administrator opens your parcel with the delicate touch of a man disarming a bomb. He rifles through the contents like he's hoping to find a reason to confiscate it. Inside, a bar of soap, a stub of candle, 2 hand-knitted socks, a single postcard with no message, just an image of a snowy forest, eerily similar to the one outside the camp. That's it. No food, no letters, no contraband. You get to keep the socks and the postcard, the soap and candle, confiscated immediately. Security reasons. The postcard ends up tucked into the slats of your bunk above your head. Not for decoration, just something to focus on when your brain starts chewing on itself in the dark. The socks, though, those are gold. They're soft, still faintly scented with something floral, and dry. Dry enough to make you suspicious. You can't stop holding them, stroking them. One of the old men says, "Careful. You'll rub a hole in them before they touch your feet. You don't care. They feel like home." The idea that someone out there remembered you, enough to send something, is both uplifting and devastating. It reminds you that you had a life, that there's a you that exists outside these fences, a person who once had conversations that didn't involve shovels, soup, or frostbite. But here's the catch. Getting mail marks you, not in ink, in suspicion. Later that evening, you're pulled aside by a man you don't recognize. Older, wiry, eyes like burnt coals. He doesn't smile. "You got friends on the outside?" he asks. You shrug. "Must be nice," he says. "Keep it quiet." Don't let the guards think you've got connections. They start thinking you're valuable. They'll squeeze you. And don't let the prisoners think you're lucky. That's worse. He walks off without another word. You hide the socks under your mattress that night. You don't wear them yet. You just want to have them a little longer. That same night, someone in the barracks starts crying. Soft, childlike sobs from the top bunk. Nobody says anything. Nobody offers comfort. It's like we all agreed not to hear it. You stare at the postcard. That forest in the picture, it looks peaceful, serene, the kind of quiet that isn't cold and brutal. You wonder if the photographer stood there snapping images, while just miles away men were digging graves in frozen soil. One guy claims the postcards are chosen on purpose, propaganda, show the beauty of the homeland, keep the Zeks obedient, docile, emotional. Maybe he's right, or maybe the person who sent it just thought you'd like the trees. Either way, you find yourself staring at that image every night before you close your eyes. You start imagining stories about it. Who lives just beyond the ridge? What birds nest in the branches? If there's a cabin out there, with soup and blankets and real light. The mind is strange like that. You can be surrounded by suffering and still get misty-eyed over pine trees on cardboard. Mail in the Gulag was a battlefield of its own, censored, delayed, tampered with. Letters often arrived months late, if they arrived at all. Most never did. Entire correspondence chains disappeared into bureaucracy, or were shredded because someone used the wrong phrase. "I miss you" could be interpreted as an anti-Soviet sentiment. "I'm cold" might be viewed as slander against camp conditions. Some Zeks stopped writing altogether, said it hurt too much, said it was better to be forgotten than to be remembered in pieces. Others wrote anyway, on scraps of paper, on birch bark, on the backs of old ration slips. Some even memorized letters and recited them every night like prayers. The poetry guy says he once wrote a love letter using only synonyms for grey just to get past the censors. It wasn't romantic, he says, but it got through. And then, of course, there were the propaganda letters, pre-written forms distributed by camp administration. Prisoners were forced to copy them in their own hand, saying how well-fed and reformed they were. "Our labour is meaningful," they had to write. "We are grateful for this chance to contribute to the great Soviet future." You find one of those forms tucked behind a beam in the barracks later that week. Torn, crumpled, never sent. The ink is smeared. The last line reads, "I am," and ends there. No signature, no closing. Just that. I am. You think about that line for a long time. Eventually you put on the socks. It's late, and the wind is howling and the fire is dying, but you slip them over your frozen feet like a secret. They're warm. Too warm almost. Your skin tingles, as if it's forgotten what comfort feels like. You fall asleep faster that night, but your dreams are worse. In them, you're standing in that same forest from the postcard. You call out. No one answers. The trees keep growing, faster, taller, until they block out the sky. When you wake up, the socks are still on your feet, and the postcard is still there, a little wrinkled now, but still real. There's a saying in the camp, one you've heard murmured like a dare. There are no fences in Siberia. Sounds poetic, doesn't it? Maybe even hopeful, but it's not. It's the bleakest joke here. Because what it really means is, they don't need fences. The cold is the fence. The wolves are the fence. The endless white stretching beyond the tree line, that's the fence. If you run, you die. If you hide, you die slower. If you're very, very lucky, you die confused and alone, surrounded by pine trees and silence. Still, people try, not often, but sometimes the hunger, the cold, the beatings, they chip away at the part of you that obeys, until something in you cracks and whispers, "Run. Just go. Anywhere but here." Today, someone cracks. It happens during a work detail, one of the logging team sent deep into the forest to haul timber. You're not on that crew, but the news spreads faster than fire. It always does. Zeks have a sixth sense for drama. A man, Kazakh maybe, or Ukrainian, nobody's sure, waited until the guards turned their backs. Then he bolted, just dropped the rope he was hauling and vanished into the trees like a ghost with sore knees. You hear about it just before dinner. Your barracks mates are already buzzing, voices low, eyes darting toward the corners like the wolves might snitch. "He was fast," someone says. "Didn't even hesitate." He won't last the night. They're bringing out the dogs. That last part is true. You hear them howling after dark, deep, echoing howls that don't sound entirely natural. Camp dogs are bred mean. Half wolf, probably. Smarter than some of the guards and twice as cruel, and if they don't get him, the cold will. The real escapees, the ones who made it more than a few kilometers, planned for months. They collected scraps of food, studied the guard shifts, mapped stars through cracks in the barracks roof. Some even teamed up with criminals, cutting deals for forged documents and smuggled maps. But even then, escape was a gamble with death. You once heard about a guy who made it to a village 3 days' walk away. He was caught stealing bread from a windowsill, turned in by a child. No reward, just the glory of loyalty. And then there are the legends, stories of people who escaped and survived, who crossed tundra, rivers, mountains, who faked their deaths or built rafts out of logging debris. Some say they made it to Mongolia, China, even Alaska. But those stories come late at night, after the soup's gone and the fire's low, when the cold numbs the truth and makes fairy tales feel like facts. The guards act faster than usual tonight. The new officer, the one with the polished boots and cane, personally oversees the search. You see him walking along the perimeter, hands clasped behind his back, face unreadable. He doesn't yell, doesn't bark orders, he just watches. Later you overhear something chilling. 2 guards talking outside your barracks, thinking no one's listening. "He'll come back." What, alive? No, but frozen. They always come back. You try to sleep, but your body won't let you. You lie there listening to the wind, except you're not sure it's just wind. Somewhere out there a man is running, or crawling, or already dead. You imagine his face. Imagine what he left behind. Imagine the moment he decided now. What snapped in his head. What burned just hot enough to make him move. And then, there's a noise. Faint but unmistakable. A flare. The kind they use when they found someone. A red flash in the sky like a bloody eyelid winking over the trees. The barracks goes still. No one speaks. You roll over and pretend to be asleep. The next morning you find out the man didn't make it. They say the dogs caught him. Took him down near the river. He'd stolen half a loaf of bread and a file. That was it. No coat, no map, no real plan, just desperation. They bring back his boots. One is missing its sole. The officer displays them in the middle of the camp. Not the body, just the boots. Propped up on a crate like a cautionary tale. It works. Nobody talks about escape for a while after that. Still, you catch people staring out toward the trees sometimes, especially at night. Especially when the moon is high and the frost isn't biting quite so hard. The trees look almost welcoming then, like they might forgive you, like they might let you vanish gently. But you know better now. There are no fences in Siberia, because the entire world is a fence, and you're not built to climb it. Historically, very few prisoners escape the Gulag system successfully. Estimates vary, but most scholars agree that escape attempts were rare and fatal. The Soviet Union's vast wilderness worked in the regime's favour, especially in the Far East, where camps like Kolyma and Sevostlag were so isolated that a single step beyond the gate meant stepping into oblivion. Even those who escaped often died shortly after, from cold, starvation, or betrayal. Some camps didn't even post heavy guards. They didn't need to. The geography did the job. There were exceptions, of course. One famous case involved a group of Polish prisoners who allegedly crossed thousands of kilometres on foot, eventually reaching India. Historians still debate its accuracy. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. But in a place where reality bends under hunger and cold, sometimes the possibility is all people need. Back in the barracks, you notice something carved into the wall near the stove. A crude compass, north, east, south, west. You stare at it longer than you mean to, then you turn your eyes away. The rats are back tonight. You hear them under the floorboards, squeaking and rustling, chewing on something, hopefully not anyone. And still, the wind howls. But it's not just wind, is it? It's the whisper of the trees, the dark invitation you're smart enough to ignore, at least for now. You've been in the camp long enough now that your old life feels like something that happened to someone else. A blurry movie you only half remember. But then, just when the frost has finally pushed everything warm and soft out of your head, you learn something unexpected. The mind, even half frozen, still wants to grow. It starts small. You're on tool inventory duty again, a gift from whatever icy god oversees this place, and you get paired with an older prisoner named Ilya. Gaunt, stooped. The kind of man whose eyes look perpetually distant, like they're always reading something behind your face. You think he's just another quiet Zek with nothing to say. And then he recites the periodic table, out loud. No drama, just hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium. His voice is soft, steady. You blink at him, confused, like he's just started singing opera in a coal mine. He notices your stare and shrugs. Used to be a professor, he says. The state said I was a foreign sympathizer. All because I wanted to attend a conference in Vienna. I barely even speak German. You laugh, because it's absurd, but it's also not. You've already learned this. In the Gulag, it doesn't take much to be guilty. Sometimes a raised eyebrow gets you a decade. Sometimes a silence gets you 2. Ilya keeps talking. Not like a man ranting, more like someone reviewing facts for an exam. He recites physics formulas, quotes lines of Russian poetry, even hums a snippet of a Bach fugue. It's unsettling. Not because it's strange, but because it's civilized. It feels like someone lit a candle in a slaughterhouse. The next day you spot him again near the barracks. He's crouched in the snow, arranging pebbles into neat rows. You pause, he gestures to them. Atomic weights, he says. Crude system, I know, but it helps. It's not just Ilya. You start to notice more of them. The quiet ones. The ones who don't talk much at dinner, who scratch symbols into the bunks, who mumble Latin or math under their breath while swinging pickaxes. The camp is full of broken men, but some of those men used to be architects, scientists, mathematicians, engineers, artists. Some were real criminals, thieves, killers, black market types, but some just had ideas. In another life, they would have taught at universities or written books or built bridges. In this one, they dig holes and count rocks. But they haven't stopped thinking, and that's when you discover the camp has a school. Sort of. Not official, of course. Just a few Zeks gathered after dark, sitting close to the stove, whispering lessons. They rotate topics. Russian history, French literature, basic astronomy. They use charcoal on scraps of paper. If there's no paper, they draw equations on the wooden floor, wiping them clean before lights out. They call it the Memory Museum, because that's what it is, really. A place to remember who you were, what the world was before it narrowed down to soup and snow and silence. You get invited one night. No formal process. Just a nod from Ilya and a gesture to the circle. That evening, a man with thick glasses and a face like a weary librarian gives a lecture on Pythagoras. He draws triangles on a piece of birch bark and explains how math can prove the shape of the universe. No one interrupts. No one mocks. Even the tattooed men listen. One of them raises his hand, half mocking, half serious, and asks if the Pythagorean theorem can help dig better ditches. The whole group laughs, and you laugh with them. You haven't really laughed in weeks. It's dangerous, of course. The guards don't care if you teach math or memorize Dante, as long as you don't organize. Education that leads to critical thinking, that's subversion. But if it keeps prisoners obedient, tired, distracted, it's tolerated. Barely. Still, the Memory Museum stays secret. You rotate locations, keep your voices low, burn the notes after every session. One night, a woman teaches a short course on classical music. She used to be a piano instructor in Leningrad. She hums fragments of Rachmaninoff, while others beat time softly on the floor with sticks. It's haunting, beautiful, almost painful. You don't realize you're crying until someone passes you a rag. No one says anything, because everyone gets it. And here's the strange historical truth. Intellectual life never fully died in the camps. Even in the worst ones, there were reports of camp universities, groups of political prisoners teaching and learning in secret. Some survived because guards liked to brag about their cultured zeks. Others existed under the radar, sustained by memory, by will, by the sheer refusal to be fully erased. There were artists who painted on scraps of cloth, poets who carved verse into the soles of their boots, mathematicians who taught proofs using pebbles and shadows. You're living among them now. Of course, not all of it's noble. Sometimes knowledge gets you in trouble. You hear about a man from another camp block, an engineer, who built a tiny radio from stolen parts, not to broadcast, just to listen. He was caught. Nobody knows what happened to him. Rumour says he's in the isolation cell, or rumour says they made him test it on himself. Either way, he's gone. But the Memory Museum keeps going, because the alternative, mental decay, is worse. One night you take a turn, nothing fancy, just a few dates from Russian history half remembered from school. Someone corrects you. Another adds a quote. It's messy and quiet and barely counts as teaching. But it feels like worship, like breathing. Afterwards, the poetry guy, the one from your bunk, leans over and says, "They can't stop us from being human. They try. They freeze us, starve us, beat us. But the mind's the last warm place." You think about that as you drift off to sleep. That night you dream not of running, or digging, or dying. You dream of a classroom, chalkboards, warm light, a teacher's voice echoing through space that isn't filled with cold. You don't want to wake up, but when you do, the snow is still falling. And for once, you're okay with that. Because you're still thinking. By the 13th week, or month, or century, whatever it feels like now, you've settled into the rhythm of the camp, which is to say, you no longer scream inside every time the whistle blows. But then comes Sunday. A strange thing, Sunday. It's not a real day off. This is the Soviet Union, not summer camp. But the work assignments tend to be lighter, and for the few not assigned to latrine duty or axe maintenance, there's a bit of breathing room. Not freedom, but a pause. And that's when you notice something else in the barracks. A hush. Not the usual exhausted silence, but a kind of quiet that feels reverent, watchful. The first time you see it, it's barely anything. Just a group of prisoners gathered in a corner near the stove, heads bowed. No talking. One man muttering very softly in a language you don't recognize at first. Then you catch a few words, not Russian, it's Church Slavonic. The man speaking is short, grey-haired, hands folded over his belly. He's not dressed differently. No collar, no robe. But he speaks with the slow authority of someone used to blessing bread and burying people. Later, someone confirms it for you. He used to be a priest, or maybe a bishop, hard to say. He doesn't talk about it. His name is Father Mikhail, or just Father. You never hear anyone call him by a number. You're surprised he's even still alive. Religion in the Soviet Union was supposed to be dead. At least officially. Churches were shuttered, icons smashed, priests imprisoned. Atheism was the state's gospel, and the camps, they were its monasteries, cold, silent, punishing. But people are stubborn, and faith doesn't freeze easily. Somehow faith found its way through the cracks in the ice, and in the barracks, that faith gathers like smoke. Father Mikhail doesn't preach, not in the usual way. No fire and brimstone, just quiet prayers, soft blessings, and the occasional story, told with a kind of distant warmth, as if he's remembering a different universe entirely. He tells one about a boy who once brought him a bouquet of wildflowers on Easter Sunday. Didn't know the name of a single flower, he says, but knew the names of every saint in his village. Someone chuckles. Even laughter here feels like an act of rebellion. You start noticing the other faithful too. Not all of them are obvious. One man has a small cross carved into the inside of his boot heel. Another uses a sliver of charcoal to draw a tiny icon behind his bunk, wiping it clean before inspections. There's a woman who carries a piece of string tied in 13 knots, a rosary. She runs it through her fingers at night like a metronome. And then there's the singing. Not often, not loud. But once, during a particularly harsh snowstorm when the winds howled so fiercely it felt like the sky itself wanted in, you hear it. Spasi, Gospodi, Lyudi Tvoya. Save, O Lord, thy people. The words hang in the cold like breath. A hymn, half sung, half wept, in voices too tired to rise but too stubborn to vanish. Nobody reports it. Even the guards seem to ignore it that time. because even cruelty recognizes something holy sometimes, if only briefly. Later, the poetry guy leans over and says, "I don't believe in God, but I believe in what they believe in. Does that make sense?" You nod. Because it does. It's not about doctrine. It's not even about hope. It's about survival of the soul. A tiny ember buried deep inside that refuses to go out no matter how much snow they pour on it. One day, while fixing a cracked shovel, you find yourself muttering something. Not a prayer, just a sentence from childhood. "Deliver us from evil." You don't even remember where you learned it. Maybe from your grandmother, maybe a book, but it feels like the right shape in your mouth. Solid, ancient, useful. That night you sit near Father Mikhail. He doesn't say anything, just offers you a small nod. You don't speak either. You just sit. But it's enough. Here's the weird part, something history books often gloss over. While the Soviet state officially outlawed religion, it never managed to erase it. Especially in the Gulag system, where faith, of every flavour, acted as a glue, a salve, even a weapon. Catholic Poles said Mass in whispered Latin. Muslim Tatars faced east when the guards weren't looking. Jews recited psalms from memory under their breath while swinging hammers. There's even record of prisoners smuggling prayer books in using microscopic script, hidden between pages of Soviet textbooks or sewn into coat linings. Some guards joined in, secretly, carefully. A candle here, a nod there, an amen said too softly to be heard by anyone but the sky. But not everyone was sympathetic. One guard, nicknamed the Iconoclast, delighted in finding contraband rosaries and burning them. He once forced a group of believers to kneel in the snow for hours, holding bricks over their heads. "You want to pray?" he'd sneered. "Pray you don't drop it." He disappeared one day. No one ever found out why. No one asked. In your camp, the repression ebbs and flows. Sometimes the prayers are tolerated. Other times they're punished harshly. You see one man get 10 days in the punishment cell for carving a cross into a fence post. But the believers keep believing, because the camp can take your bread, your boots, your name. But it can't touch what you say inside your head. You start to understand that better each week. Even if you're not sure you believe in God, you start believing in belief. In the way it gives structure to days that otherwise bleed together. In the way it fills the silence with something bigger than hunger and snow. Father Mikhail tells you once, the soul is like a candle. It doesn't stop being itself just because it's surrounded by darkness. You nod. You don't say it aloud, but you think, and this place is all darkness. But somehow, that little flame keeps burning. One night you dream of a church. Not a real one, a patchwork one. The walls are made of barracks boards, the pews are shovels, the altar is just a stone. But the light? The light comes from everywhere. And for once you wake up warm. If you think your life in the camp is hell, let's turn the spotlight for a moment. Because if you're a woman in the Gulag, you're living in a whole separate layer of it. Like someone looked at the nightmare and said, wait, what if we made it worse? You don't meet many women in your daily routine. The camp is largely segregated, and interaction between genders is discouraged. Officially. But occasionally during work detail crossovers, food lines, or accidental moments near the laundry shed, paths intersect. And when they do, it's impossible not to notice. The women are thinner, somehow greyer. Their eyes flick faster, always scanning. They walk hunched, not just from cold or labour, but like they're trying to fold themselves into something smaller, harder to touch. One of them is named Marina. You don't know that at first. Names are rare gifts here, but it filters through the murmurs. You first see her during a firewood transfer. She's carrying a bundle bigger than she is, arms trembling under the load. A guard jokes about her dropping it, and someone else, another prisoner, laughs too loud. She says nothing, just keeps walking. Later you hear from one of the kitchen workers that Marina used to be a midwife, got sent here for counter-revolutionary remarks. Translation: she refused to name a child after a party official. That's all it took. Now she hauls logs and dodges men with too much power and too few teeth. Some camps were all male, some all female, but others, like yours, had both, separated by little more than wire and fear. And when that thin boundary frays, it's never good news for the women. You've heard the stories, everyone has. There's a phrase the prisoners use, double sentence. Being a woman in the Gulag means twice the work, twice the risk, and none of the protection. Not from guards, Not from male prisoners, not from the system. Some women disappear for a day and come back with bruises and better shoes. Others disappear and don't come back at all. It's not always violent. Not technically. Sometimes it's a trade. Bread for warmth, protection for company, a seat near the stove for a night without fists. The lines blur. Consent doesn't mean much when starvation is the alternative. And here's the cruelest part. Those arrangements often come with consequences. Other prisoners judge, whisper. She's with that guard. She sold herself for a spoonful of jam. In a place designed to crush humanity, even basic survival tactics become fodder for shame. One woman you pass, Anna maybe, wears a scarf wrapped tightly around her wrist. You think nothing of it until someone mutters, "She gave birth last year." There's no baby now. There's never a baby for long in the camps. You try not to imagine the rest. Historically, women's experience in the Gulag has been underdocumented. For years, it was overshadowed by broader narratives of political repression, mass labour, and male martyrdom. But the truth is, women were there, in massive numbers, and their stories are just as harrowing. Some were activists, some were accused spies, many were just wives, relatives, guilt by association. One woman reportedly got 10 years because her husband had once criticised Stalin's moustache. He disappeared. She got the family member of a traitor stamp. Welcome to the Gulag. And yes, there were mothers. Some brought children with them at first. Infants born in transit. Babies delivered in cold barracks. The system didn't know what to do with them. Some camps set up primitive nurseries. Most didn't. Babies died. Toddlers vanished. The women kept going because they had no choice. Marina, when you finally talk to her, tells you a strange thing. She says she teaches poetry in the laundry shed, once a week. Not for rations or reward, just because the girls need a rhythm. You ask what she means. She says, "When you're scrubbing blood out of cloth all day, rhyme helps you feel like something's still in order." You don't know what to say to that, so you just nod. Later, you sneak a glance at the laundry shed when no one's watching. There's a pattern scratched into the doorframe repeated like a prayer. This too will pass. Carved by dozens of hands, some crossed out and some faded and some still wet. There's one woman everyone avoids. Galina. She walks like her joints are made of wire and glass. Her face has this expression you can't quite name. Detached, but not blank. She was pretty once, probably. She still might be, if you could scrape away the years and frost. Word is she was kept by an officer for 2 winters. That's the phrase. Kept like a candle, or a dog. He's gone now, transferred, promoted maybe, no one knows. But Galina stayed. She doesn't talk to anyone, doesn't participate in the memory museum, just works, eats, and folds herself back into her bunk like she's trying to disappear. She might succeed. One night, while unloading coal near the fence line, you hear something strange. Singing, women's voices. It's not loud, not beautiful, but it's unmistakably music. Low, rhythmic, half-hummed, something between a lullaby and a funeral chant. The guard nearby doesn't say anything. Maybe he doesn't hear. Maybe he pretends not to. You keep working. But the song sticks in your head. Later in the barracks, you ask the poetry guy if he heard it. He nods. They sing to remember their names. You don't press him. You just lie back thinking about Marina, Galina, the women behind the laundry shed, how they find strength in rhymes and thread and borrowed firewood, how they carry not just their own lives, but the weight of being watched, used, discarded. And yet, somehow, they survive. Not all of them. But enough. Enough to remind you that survival isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a soft voice in the dark saying, "This too will pass," even when no one believes it anymore. There are a few ways to get into the camp infirmary. You can slip on the ice and crack your skull, or you can accidentally drop a brick on your foot. You can try eating a piece of mystery meat you find in a trash heap, or jab your hand with a nail and hope the infection doesn't kill you before the cold does. Or you can do what you do, wake up one morning and realise you can't stand up. Your legs aren't injured, they're just done. As if the muscles went on strike overnight. You sit on the edge of your bunk, blinking at your own knees like they're 2 dead things someone stitched onto your body in the dark. A few people glance at you. One man shrugs. "Happens," he says, and goes back to lacing his boots. The guard comes by minutes later barking names. When you don't move, he shouts louder. You try to explain, something's wrong, but the words don't come out right. Your mouth feels dry, tongue swollen like a sponge soaked in vinegar. You manage to point to your legs. He sighs like this is all very inconvenient for him. Then he calls someone else over. You expect to be dragged out, beaten, or both. Instead, they lift you, roughly, like a sack of potatoes, and carry you through the yard, past the lines of shuffling prisoners, to a squat building near the back of the camp. The infirmary. You've heard about it, but never seen the inside. Honestly, you weren't sure it even existed. It does, technically. The inside smells like rust and wet cloth. The walls are cracked, patched with layers of peeling paint and old newspaper. The beds are metal frames with sagging mattresses if you're lucky. A few have no padding at all, just a board with a blanket that smells like 10 different kinds of disease. A man in a stained smock walks over. Not a doctor, a medic maybe. Formally. His hands shake as he pokes at your leg and frowns. He doesn't ask many questions, just mutters something about vitamin deficiency and scribbles on a clipboard made of cardboard. You're assigned a bed by the wall. It creaks when you lie on it. Welcome to the sanatorium of despair. There are 6 others in here. 2 are wrapped in bandages that look like they've never been changed. One has a cough so deep it sounds like a steam engine dying. Another just stares at the ceiling with eyes that don't blink. You hope he's asleep. You're handed a cup of warm water and a lump of sugar. Yes, sugar. Real sugar. You stare at it for a long time, unsure if this is a fever dream. Then you pop it into your mouth. It melts like a memory. The sweetness is so sharp it burns. You close your eyes and savour every grain. This might be the best moment you've had in weeks. The irony, of course, is that you only got it by nearly collapsing. The infirmary is many things. Unsanitary, freezing, overrun. But it's also one of the only places where you're not swinging a pickaxe. For some prisoners, it's a twisted kind of vacation. Some get sick on purpose. They call it pulling a Lazarus. They'll injure themselves just enough to land a few days in bed. Fake fevers. Slice a toe with a shard of glass. One man swallowed small stones. Another pretended he was hearing voices. That didn't end well. But the problem with faking sick in the Gulag is that sometimes it stops being fake. You start out acting. Then the body catches on. There's a story the poetry guy told once about a man who kept pretending he was dying, until he forgot he wasn't. His mind gave up before his body did. They buried him before he stopped breathing. You lie there and try not to think about that. The man in the next bed over starts talking to you. His name's Yuri. He says it like he remembers saying it often once, back before everything got turned to numbers. Yuri was a mechanic, got arrested for stealing a carburetor. Except he didn't steal it. He made one. Built it from spare parts and junk. The factory manager took credit, then turned him in to cover up a missing shipment. Progress, he says, gets you killed. He laughs and immediately winces. He has cracked ribs. Something to do with a dropped log and a boot that didn't quite miss his side. You ask how long he's been in the infirmary. Too long, he says, which means not long enough. You understand. The medic returns in the afternoon. This time he checks your legs more closely, pushes and prods and frowns. He says something about nerves. You nod like you understand. You don't. But you can move your toes again by evening, so that's something. And there's no treatment plan, no diagnosis, just rest. And by rest, they mean don't die. That's the only real job of the infirmary. It's not to heal you. It's to keep you usable. Once you can walk without falling over, you'll be thrown back into the rotation. Doesn't matter if your ribs still grind together when you breathe or your hands shake so badly you can't hold a spoon. If you're vertical, you're viable. Still, there are tiny perks. The room is warmer than the barracks. Slightly. The food is the same, but it arrives with less shouting, and you're allowed to lie still for more than 4 hours at a time. Luxury by Gulag standards. The downside? You're surrounded by the dying. One man slips away quietly during the night. No cries, no coughing, just doesn't wake up. By morning, the medic doesn't even check for a pulse, just points, and the orderlies carry him away like a broomed pile of trash. No ceremony, no pause. Yuri whispers, I liked that guy. Told good jokes. You ask what kind. He says, mostly about soup. There's something tragic about that. But you laugh anyway. Laughter in the infirmary feels illicit, like sneaking a cigarette behind the schoolhouse. Here's a fringe fact for the night. Some prisoners believed the infirmary was cursed, that going in meant your name had already been whispered to death. They called it the antechamber, the hallway to nowhere. Others saw it as the only place where you might get a real moment of peace, even if it came at a price. Scholars still argue over how much care was actually provided in camps like this. Some memoirs suggest medics did their best with what little they had. Others claim they were functionaries at best, executioners at worst. It's probably both. You fall asleep to the sound of a man wheezing through his dreams. Your legs ache, but you can feel them again. Progress. In the morning, you're handed another sugar cube. You bite it in half and save the rest for later. It's the only sweet thing you've got. Winter isn't coming. Winter is. And it's not poetic or beautiful, like those calendar pages with snow-covered trees and quaint villages. This isn't some frosted wonderland. It's a predator, cold with teeth. And right now, it's gnawing on your fingers. Every breath you take stings your lungs. Your eyelids feel like they've been sanded. Your skin cracks open in places you didn't even know had skin. And the wind, oh, the wind, doesn't howl. It screams. Every gust feels like a personal insult from Siberia itself. You've long since stopped checking the temperature. Not that you ever had a thermometer, but Zeks have a rating system of their own. There's nose cold, your nose goes numb, bone cold, your joints stop working, and then Gulag cold, when the air hurts to blink. Today's a Gulag cold kind of day. You're on wood hauling duty, again. Because if there's one thing this place has an endless supply of besides snow and hunger, it's trees. Miles and miles of endless silent trees, watching you work like mournful giants. Your task is simple. Carry logs from point A to point B, except point A is a frozen hillside, and point B is a quarter-mile of sheer ice away. You're given no gloves. Your boots are 2 sizes too big and lined with regret. And the log? It's heavier than your will to live. It's a team job. You're paired with another Zek, a silent man named Stepan who grunts once per hour and smells like fish and fury. You don't ask questions. You just grab your end and start moving. The log bites into your shoulder with each step. The snow underfoot is packed down into slick grooves by thousands of footsteps, turning every path into a skating rink of doom. Every few yards, someone slips. Sometimes the log goes down with them. Once, a man's leg snaps. The sound is crisp, clean, like a celery stalk. No one flinches anymore. The guards just wave for the next pair to grab the log and keep going. Some say the cold is better than the heat. That in warmer camps, south toward Kazakhstan, men dropped from sunstroke and disease. But out here, the cold is impartial. Everyone's meat in the freezer. You try not to think about your fingers. They've gone past numb. They're quiet. Too quiet. That's the danger zone. At least when they hurt, they're still yours. But when they stop complaining, that's when they start dying. You've seen it happen. The guy takes off his glove to tie a bootlace. 30 seconds later, the tips of his fingers are grey. A minute after that, they're black. A week later, he's walking around with a mitten full of gauze and no fingers. Frostbite is a sneaky little monster. It doesn't scream, it whispers. You only realise it's taken a bite when you're already missing something. The old-timers have tricks. Wrap newspaper around your feet. Stuff straw into your boots. Keep moving, always. One man claims spitting into the wind tells you how long you have before frostbite sets in. If it cracks when it hits the ground, he says, you've got 5 minutes. If it freezes in midair, you've got 1. You start spitting occasionally just to check. Today, it freezes midair. Cool, literally. At lunch, your bread is a brick. You hold it in your armpit for 10 minutes just to soften it enough to chew. The soup is lukewarm and tastes like boiled rubber. You don't care. You lick the inside of the bowl. Stepan eats with his face 2 inches from the soup, shielding it from the wind like it's a newborn child. He finishes, looks at you and says, I miss cigarettes more than my wife. That's the first full sentence you've heard from him. You nod solemnly, like that's the most reasonable thing you've ever heard. There's a story making the rounds about a guy who tried to start a fire using nothing but friction and a pencil stub. It didn't work, obviously, but the point isn't the fire, it's that he believed it might. That's what winter does. It warps reality, makes you gamble with logic. Another man tried to light a fire using kerosene and pages from a political pamphlet. The fire exploded, took off his eyebrows and his sense of smell. He still says it was worth it. At night, the barracks are colder than outside. You'd think the walls and low ceiling would help trap heat, but they don't. They trap cold. The stove isn't lit tonight. No fuel. You huddle under your blanket, if you're lucky enough to have one, and try not to move. Movement stirs the air, stirs the cold. Yuri from the infirmary sneaks in around midnight. He's still limping from his broken ribs, but he's recovered enough to be kicked out. He crawls into a bunk and immediately starts rubbing his hands together like he's trying to start a fire with his palms. He mutters, "I used to hate summer. Too hot. Now I'd swallow the sun. You would too." The poetry guy says something through chattering teeth. "Hell is warm. We're in the wrong place." No one laughs. You wake up with ice on your eyelashes, inside. That's when it really hits you. Winter isn't a season here. It's the warden, and you can't bribe it. Scholarly debate time. Some historians argue that the climate of the far northern camps was not the main cause of high mortality. Malnutrition and overwork were. Others counter that extreme weather was absolutely a death sentence, compounding every other hardship tenfold. If you're shoveling gravel for 10 hours in minus 40 degrees Celsius, your body just gives out, slowly, quietly, and sometimes you don't even notice until it's too late. There's no official record of how many froze to death. The numbers are buried under euphemisms, natural causes, died in sleep, cardiac failure. But everyone who was here knows the truth. One day a man simply doesn't wake up. You see the frost still clinging to his beard, his eyes frozen halfway open. He's stiff as the bunk he's on. The guards don't bother removing him until after roll call. Even then it takes 3 men to carry him out. He doesn't bend, no one speaks. But someone lights a match, just one. It burns out in the wind almost instantly. Still, for that second, there's fire. You hold the image in your head all day. Because in this cold, fire isn't just warmth, it's hope. You've been dreading this since your first week in the camp, back when someone whispered about it with the kind of fear usually reserved for devils and inspectors. And now it's your turn. You've been assigned to Kaza duty. The hole, the box, the ice locker. It goes by a dozen names, but everyone knows what it really is. Punishment without paperwork. Suffering with a door. And all because a guard claims you didn't salute him properly. Seriously, that's it. You were dragging your legs to roll call half frozen, head down like always. And apparently that wasn't respectful enough. You didn't even know they still expected salutes. Now you're standing outside a squat brick building, flanked by 2 guards who clearly enjoy this part of the job a little too much. One of them smirks as he unlocks the thick metal door, the other already holding the keys like he's winding up a punchline. They shove you inside and then slam the door shut. No explanation, no timeline, no human words exchanged. Just clank, and then darkness. The first thing you notice is the cold. It's not regular cold. This is silence in the bone cold. A cold so thick it feels like paste on your skin. The walls are stone, damp, seeping with the kind of chill that doesn't rise and fall. It just is. There's no window, no light, just a crack under the door barely wide enough to suck in a breath of less frozen air. The room is the size of a closet. You can lie down if you curl up, but standing. That's encouraged. They want you to stand. There's barely enough room to pace. The floor is sloped slightly, forcing your body off balance no matter how you shift your weight. There's a bucket in the corner. You don't want to think about the last person who used it. Your breath hangs in front of your face, barely visible in the blackness. You try to hug yourself, but your arms ache, and your fingertips already feel brittle. There's a debate among the prisoners, whether the box was designed by a sadist or just a bureaucrat who didn't think much about dimensions. Either way, it does the trick. There's no bed, no blanket, no food. Water comes once a day, maybe, depending on the guard's mood. Time here doesn't pass. It loiters. You have no idea how long you're supposed to be inside, no one tells you. Some say 3 days is the standard for minor offences. Others say there isn't a standard. They just let you rot until they forget why they put you in. The worst part isn't the cold, or the pain, or even the hunger. It's the quiet. You didn't realise how much you'd come to rely on the constant background noise of camp life. The groans, the coughs, the footfalls, even the distant yelling. Here, there's nothing. Just your own breathing, your heartbeat, the occasional creak of your joints, and your thoughts. They don't come in a neat, logical order. They come like birds during a storm, screeching, scattered, diving for cover. You think about home, then you think about food. Then you think about the guy who told you that in the box. Men sometimes forget their names. You try saying yours out loud just to test. It sounds foreign, like something borrowed. Eventually you sleep. Not real sleep, just a kind of collapse, your brain shutting down like a blown fuse. You wake up shivering so hard your teeth clack together like dice in a cup. You try to stand, but your legs protest, cramping. You slide back to the corner and huddle like a dying animal. You try to sing, something, anything. A lullaby, a song from school, even a camp hymn, but your throat's too dry. Your voice is a whisper, barely louder than your heartbeat. They open the door once a bowl is shoved in. Soup. Cold. Lumpy. Probably yesterday's. You crawl to it like a dog, slurp it down with trembling hands. The warmth, if you can call it that, lasts maybe 30 seconds. But for that half minute, you're alive again. Then the door shuts, and you're nothing again. This is how you learn the difference between loneliness and isolation. Loneliness is missing someone. Isolation is missing everything. Even pain starts to feel like company. You try to count time, how many times you've stood up, how many breaths, how many cracks in the wall, but it falls apart. You could be in here 12 hours, or 5 days. You've stopped knowing. Eventually they open the door again. Light hits you like a punch in the face. You blink against it, eyes watering instantly. A guard yells something. You don't register the words. They grab you by the arms and drag you out. You can't walk. Not really. Your legs are jelly. Your brain is snow. Your mouth tastes like rust and cotton. They drop you just outside the building like garbage. No explanation, no follow-up. Just, you're done. For now. You lie there in the snow, blinking at the grey sky, trying to remember where you are, who you are. Your hands curl into fists around nothing. Someone picks you up. A familiar voice. Yuri. Back from the land of ghosts, he mutters. You try to answer. Your lips split when you smile. Back in the barracks, no one asks, no one welcomes you back. Because everyone who's been in the hole knows you don't talk about it. Not because it's forbidden, but because it's fragile. Like if you put it into words, it'll crawl out of your mouth and wrap itself around you again. Historically, the kaza, the punishment cell, was used not just to discipline, but to erase. The goal wasn't correction, it was deconstruction, break the mind, unravel the identity. Some Zeks returned a little quieter, others never spoke again. A few were carried out permanently. There were variations. Some were simply dark rooms, others were filled with icy water. One infamous version had a floor of sharp stones, so you couldn't sit or lie down without injury. Survivors called it the slow box. You last 2 days, they tell you later. Could have been worse, could have been forgotten. You wake up the next morning with frostbitten toes and a voice that barely works. But you're breathing, you're back, you're a Zek again, and somehow that's an upgrade. You're back on your feet. If you can call these things feet anymore, they're wrapped in so many layers of cloth, rags, and wishful thinking that they barely resemble human anatomy. But they move, and moving means working, and working means surviving, for now. You've been assigned to logistics duty. That sounds important, almost bureaucratic, but here it just means hauling junk from one part of the camp to another. Today it's nails, bent ones, being sorted by size. Yesterday it was a stack of cracked buckets. Tomorrow could be anything. But it also means you're moving between zones. You see things, you hear things, you learn things. Like this. The black market is alive and well. It operates in shadows, whispers, and sleight of hand. It's not some shady stall with signs and prices. It's a nod during roll call, a small swap during tool inspection, a piece of potato slipped into a mitten, a match head crumbled into someone's soup, and everyone participates. Zeks, guards, even medics. It's the only system that actually works. You start to notice the transactions. A man scratches his neck twice near the laundry shed, code for I have salt. Another lets his glove fall at the mess line. Inside it, a pencil stub. Valuable. The currency here isn't money, it's objects. Rare, broken, and bizarre. Take boots. Not full pairs, those are priceless. But even a bootlace is a big deal. A spoon with a full handle? That's high class. Thread? You could trade it for a button. A whole button. You could eat extra for 2 days if you know the right person. One guy has a button from a military coat. He keeps it in a sock tied around his neck like an amulet. Claims it's worth 3 cigarettes or a full meal on the right day. When he shows it to you, he cradles it like a baby bird. You believe him. Then there's the weird stuff. A cracked comb, a single boot heel, a melted shard of candle, a pencil eraser. Someone even has a harmonica. Doesn't play it. Just has it. That's enough. Why? Because having anything the state didn't give you is power, even if it's useless. Especially if it's useless. A guy once traded a broken mirror shard for an extra pair of socks. The mirror had no value, no practical use, but it showed a face. In a world where people stopped looking at themselves, that was almost spiritual. You try your luck one day. You find a metal wire in the snow, bent like a question mark. You clean it off, tuck it into your coat. At lunch, you flash it to the prisoner handling the firewood pile. He looks at it, squints, and offers you something you haven't seen in a week. A whole uncracked piece of charcoal. Not for warmth, for writing. You pocket it like it's gold. The Memory Museum uses it that night. Ilya draws out a map of Moscow on the floorboards, naming each street like a prayer. You listen like it's a travel guide to a heaven you'll never reach. One man offers you half a potato for that charcoal the next day. You say no. Because here's the secret. Once you participate in the black market, you stop being just a number. You become a player. Small time, bottom rung, but still part of the other economy, and suddenly you see the camp differently. You see the guard who turns a blind eye when two men swap mittens. You see the kitchen worker who always seems to have too much pepper in his soup. You see the Zek who walks with a limp until there's a deal to be made. There's even a man who calls himself the accountant. Not his real job. Not even ironic. He keeps track of trades. Mentally. Who owes what to whom? Who stiffed who? Who's reliable? Who vanishes before paying? He has no authority. No muscle. But people listen to him. Because memory is the only credit system left. And debts in the Gulag, they don't expire. Sometimes it's simple. A potato for a sock. A sewing needle for 2 slivers of soap. Other times, the trades are more complicated. A man offers to teach someone how to write Chinese characters in exchange for the use of a blanket for one night. One Zek fixes a broken shovel handle with twine and trades it to a guard for an extra hour off his work detail. The poetry guy, of course, trades a haiku for a candle stub. Yes, a haiku. You ask him what it was. He grins and says, "Snow on my collar / whispers like my mother's voice." I forget her face. You don't know if it's good, but it worked. Even the infirmary is in on it. The medics don't get much, but what they do have, bandages, salves, boiled water, they can leverage. You hear someone traded a bottle cap for a clean gauze wrap, not because it was worth anything, but because it shined. Some historians call the Gulag's black market primitive capitalism. Others argue it was a survival-based barter system born of pure necessity. But if you ask the people who were there, they'll tell you it was proof they were still human. Because animals don't trade. Animals don't assign value to garbage. Only people do. And in a place built to crush every shred of autonomy, that's a rebellion. There's a downside, of course. Trades go bad. Someone stiffs someone, or worse, rats them out. You see it happen. 2 men trade coats, then one accuses the other of sabotage. The guard doesn't care what the truth is. He takes them both to the box. You walk past the barracks that night and see both bunks empty. So now you're careful. Quiet. You don't flaunt your treasures. You whisper. You verify. You never flash an item unless you know who's watching. You stash your charcoal stub inside a hollow plank under your bunk, next to your spoon, your match head, your pencil shavings, your bank account. One night you dream you're at a store. Shelves full of strange things. Rope made of hair, boots with no soles, soup frozen solid in a bowl. You walk the aisles, arms full of junk. When you get to the counter, the cashier looks up. It's Stepan. He says, "All of this? Not enough," and sweeps it off the counter. You wake up clutching your spoon like a child holding a toy. You trade nothing the next day, just to be safe. But you watch. Because in this place, the real economy doesn't run on rubles. It runs on desperation, on memory, on broken things. And somehow, that's more stable than anything the guards could ever build. You wouldn't think a place like this would have culture. Culture is supposed to be soft, elevated, museum stuff. Things people clap politely for and display under glass. Not something you find between latrine duty and frostbite. And yet, here it is. Not official, of course. There are no art shows or talent nights, no announcements pinned to bulletin boards. There are no bulletin boards. But culture still happens here. Quietly, illegally, beautifully. It starts with language. Camp slang isn't just colourful, it's its own dialect. You learn it without trying. Words mutate, meanings twist, and everything gets filtered through the mouth of misery. Take suka. In regular Russian, it means bitch. In here, it's complicated. A label for traitors, for informants, for the criminal caste who collaborated with guards during the war. To call someone suka here is a death sentence, or at least a fight. Then there's shmon, a search. As in, there was a shmon in the barracks. They found a spoon sharpened into a blade. There's krisha, which means roof, but in here it means protection. usually paid for with favours or food. Gonets, a runner or messenger between prisoners. Belly, white, a term for a Zek who keeps his head down, doesn't get involved. And then there's shifir. Shifir. It's a black, bitter, almost mythical tea brewed with enough leaves to dissolve your organs. It's not just a drink, it's a ritual. One spoonful of leaves steeped in boiling water for an hour until the liquid is dark enough to stain wood. A single sip makes your heart punch you from the inside. 2 sips and you're halfway to enlightenment, or a panic attack. It's the camp's answer to champagne. You see your first shifir ceremony on a rare evening when the barracks is quieter than usual. A group of older prisoners gather around a tin cup, passing it between them like they're in a secret society. They don't drink it casually, they worship it. Eyes closed, breathing slow. Someone offers you a sip, you take it. It tastes like burned tobacco and regret. You love it instantly. But culture doesn't stop with words and drinks. It tattoos itself onto skin, literally. In the wash shed one evening, you see it. The tattooed man, back exposed, arms lifted. His skin is a canvas of survival and symbolism. Stars on the shoulders, high-rank criminal. Crosses on the knuckles. A cathedral across his chest with 5 domes. 5 prison terms. Underneath it all, a dagger through a rose. He catches you staring and says, "Every mark means something." He points to a faded image of a skull on his forearm. "This one? I got in Buturka, when I still thought I'd get out." Another man in the barracks has a clock face tattooed on his hand with no hands. "Time doesn't move in here," he explains. Some prisoners tattoo their sentences on their skin like cursed timelines. Others etch slogans, prayers, or jokes. You even see one man with a line from a banned poem. "I am not afraid of death, only forgetting." He says it was his wife's favourite. He doesn't remember her name. Then there's the songs. They're not what you'd expect. No national anthems or folk ballads. The songs here are raw, improvised, half sung, half chanted, passed down like secret codes. Some are dirty, some are heartbreaking, most are both. One goes like this: "Dig, brother, dig. The shovel's not yours, but the hole will be." Another is barely words, just a rhythmic moan, rising and falling in time with footsteps or hammer blows. There's a woman you hear sometimes near the laundry shed. She hums what sounds like a lullaby while wringing out rags. No one dares interrupt her. It's like watching someone light a candle in a hurricane. The poetry guy naturally contributes. He scribbles verses into scraps of bark, recites them during work shifts. Most are darkly funny. One goes, "They took my name, they took my bed, they left me soup, and fear instead." He laughs when he reads it. No one else does. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, you hear someone whispering stories. Not rumours, stories. A tale about a Zek who escaped by pretending to be dead and crawling out in a pile of bodies. Another about a guard who secretly helped prisoners write letters until he was caught and vanished into the snow. You don't know which stories are true, it doesn't matter. They're all real here. Even drawing exists, though it's rare. You've seen men scratch faces into floorboards with nails, or draw maps with ash on stone. One prisoner paints with his food, beet juice for blood, bread crusts as brushes. He creates entire scenes on his bunk wall only for them to be scrubbed away during inspection. Still, he keeps painting. Every week. Because why not? And here's the strange truth historians don't always know what to do with. The Gulag didn't erase creativity. It compressed it, turned it into diamonds. The worst conditions produced some of the most haunting art, the most honest language, the most bitterly beautiful humour. Why? Because when everything's taken from you, your name, your freedom, your future, the only thing left is expression. A joke becomes defiance, a drawing becomes testimony, a song becomes resistance. You become something more than just a body swinging a pickaxe. You become a voice. Tonight, after dinner, someone sings. It's quiet, barely audible over the wind, but you recognise it. A children's song, one your mother used to hum when you couldn't sleep. You don't remember all the words, just the melody. You hum along and for a moment, just a flicker, you feel something unexpected. Not joy, but something adjacent, something stubborn, like a match refusing to go out. Work re-educates the man. You've seen the sign. It's nailed above the gate. Black letters on a crooked plank. They probably meant it to be inspirational. Bold Soviet truth beaming down on your icicle eyebrows as you trudge past. But really, it's just the punchline to a bad joke. Because here's the reality. The only thing being educated here is your pain tolerance. The propaganda is everywhere, even in this frozen outpost of agony. Banners with cheery slogans flapping in the wind like sad little lies. Through labour, freedom. Every blow of the hammer strikes a chord for communism. It's all painted in fading red on wood that's been cracking for years. The guards recite it like scripture, not because they believe it, but because you're supposed to, or at least pretend to. That's the thing. No one actually buys the slogans. But if you roll your eyes too obviously, that's a visit to the punishment cell. Or worse, reclassification as a non-cooperative element, which comes with a lovely transfer to a colder, hungrier corner of the empire. You remember one guard, young, soft-featured, probably fresh from some indoctrination school, who used to shout, "Smile! You're building the future!" during roll call. He didn't last long. The older guards mocked him behind his back until he learned to keep his slogans quiet and his boots louder. One day, you're lined up in the yard for a voluntary political lecture. That's what they call it. Voluntary. It's not. The guard even chuckles when he says it, like he's in on the joke. You're herded into a wooden hall that smells like mildew and defeat. A portrait of Stalin watches from the wall, half faded, one eye rubbed away by time or mischief. A man stands at the front, civilian clothes, spectacles. He looks like a professor who took the wrong train. He starts droning about reform through productive labour, about how your work helps rebuild the Soviet economy, how every trench you dig, every tree you cut, brings glory to the motherland. You glance around. A guy 3 rows over is asleep, head bobbing like a deflated balloon. Another is picking something out of his hair. Lice, probably. No one's listening. Not really. But you pretend to listen, because that's what's expected, and sometimes pretending is all you've got. The speaker pulls out a chart, lines and numbers probably fabricated, and explains how prisoner labour is outperforming civilian factories. He says it like it's a triumph, like it's not the result of desperate men working 10 hours a day for a crust of bread and a scream. Afterward, you're required to fill out a re-education satisfaction report. You don't even laugh anymore. You just mark the little box that says you feel motivated by ideological engagement. You try not to press too hard with a pencil. They notice that kind of thing. Later that night, someone jokes about it, says, next time they'll ask if we've discovered inner peace during potato duty. Someone else suggests, we should start writing our own slogans, real ones, and so begins the great counter-propaganda campaign. It starts as sarcasm, a way to stay sane. You and a few others start inventing your own posters. Not on paper is too precious, but whispered, scratched in snow, drawn in charcoal on the backs of bunk planks. Dig harder, heaven's only 6 feet down. Cold builds character, frostbite builds socialism. Complain and gain, 3 extra days of snow meditation. The poetry guy goes wild. He writes a whole fake manual titled How to Achieve Glory Through Suffering, Volume 1. Sample entry. The shovel is your friend. Embrace it. Sleep with it. Name it after your lost dreams. The thing is, this satire, this mockery, it spreads. And that's when you realise something profound. The moment you start laughing at the machine, it can't control you fully anymore. It still beats you, starves you, freezes you, but it can't own you, not completely. And of course, it notices. One morning, a bunk is found with a piece of charcoal graffiti, a crude drawing of a prisoner kissing a shovel under the words, Comrade Iron Will. It's not subtle. The guards are not amused. A schmon follows, a full search. They rip through bedding, flip mattresses, shake out boots. No one confesses, but the message is clear. Jokes are dangerous, because they're true, because they survive. Here's the historical twist. The Soviet Union was obsessed with appearances. On paper, the Gulag was a place of re-education, not punishment. Prisoners were meant to emerge reformed, grateful, productive members of society. Reports were forged, inspections staged, camps were cleaned and scrubbed before visiting officials arrived. There's a phrase survivors use, they whitewash the snow. They mean it literally. Camp roads were sometimes swept clean before government visits, trees planted, flowers laid out, and prisoners forced to smile on cue. You experience that firsthand when a delegation comes through. Word spreads fast. Moscow's sending a photographer. The next morning everything's different. Barracks scrubbed. Uniforms redistributed. You're handed a fresh scarf. Yes, a scarf. The first you've seen in weeks. It smells like soap and mothballs. You don't ask where it came from. Guards pace like parade captains. Soup is thicker, bread is warm, there's meat. People sit straighter, smile wider. One man even sings. The photographer snaps pictures of you all pretending not to be dying. After they leave, the scarf is taken back. The meat, gone. The beatings? Resume? But something strange happens. That afternoon, someone draws a new poster in the snow. A smiley face wearing a scarf with the caption, "Comrade Cold, now with extra warmth for guests." You laugh. So do others. And for a moment, just a flicker, you feel like you've won something. Not freedom and not justice, but the right to name the absurd, the right to look the machine in the face and say, "Oh, no, I see you." That night you lie in your bunk and remember the fake slogans. You add one of your own. Truth is what we whisper after curfew. No one hears it, but it still feels like a victory. You wake up to the sound of your own name, not your number, your name. It takes a second to register. You've grown so used to being called prisoner, or just, "Hey, you," that hearing your actual name feels like someone calling out from a previous life. You blink up through the gloom of the barracks and see a guard standing at the door, holding a clipboard like it owes him money. He repeats it. Your name. And then, you've got mail. Now, you're not an especially sentimental person, or at least you weren't, before your ribs learned to count calories, before you started measuring time in spoonfuls of chifir and curses per hour. But hearing that you've received mail does something to your insides. It makes your heart trip over itself like it's forgotten how to function. Mail. A letter. From outside, you sit up too fast and get dizzy, but you don't care. You stumble out of bed, boots half-tied, mind racing. Who? How? Is it real? Is this a trick? But there it is. A folded envelope, creased and yellowed and real. Your name scrawled across the front in shaky handwriting that could be your mother's, or your sister's, or maybe someone else entirely. The guard tosses it at you like garbage. You catch it like treasure. He doesn't let you read it right away, of course. First, it has to be inspected, opened, scanned. Anything subversive, sentimental, or even too hopeful gets blacked out, or worse, confiscated entirely. But this one passes. You're allowed to read it under supervision, and somehow that's more terrifying than not receiving it at all. You open it with trembling fingers. The paper is soft from moisture and age. The ink has bled in places, but you recognize the hand. It is your sister. She's alive. The letter is short, probably had to be, to get through. She says she thinks of you every day, that she made kasha the way you used to like it and couldn't eat a bite, that she talked to someone who knew someone who might be able to help, but not to get your hopes up, that she hopes the stars are still visible at night. She signs it. With stubborn love. You don't cry. Not then. Later, when you're back in the barracks, curled under your thin blanket, you let it happen. Just a few tears. Quiet ones. Hot against the cold. You fold the letter into a tiny square and tuck it into the lining of your coat, near your heart, and for the rest of the day you walk a little taller, because someone remembered. Mail is rare. For most prisoners, it never comes. Some families don't know where you are. Others can't write, or are too afraid. A single sentence that hints at the wrong thing, a name, a town, a complaint, and the whole letter vanishes. You hear about a man who received a postcard with nothing but a doodle of a pine tree on it. No message, no signature, just a tree. He kept it for 6 years, said it reminded him of home. Another man got a blank page, completely empty. He said it was the best letter he ever received. It meant they're still out there. They're still afraid, but they're alive. One woman in the laundry shed receives a single letter every spring, a tradition, from her mother, who writes about the tulips in the yard, about peeling potatoes, about nothing. And every year, the woman smells the letter before she reads it, just in case it carries the scent of home. Not all mail brings joy. Sometimes it brings news of death, or disappearance, or silence. One man received a note saying, "Your wife has remarried. Please do not write again." That was the entire message. No greeting, no signature, just a closed door. He read it once and then ate the paper, swallowed it, didn't speak for 2 weeks afterward. Historically, the Soviet authorities did allow some correspondence between prisoners and the outside world, but it was heavily censored, monitored, and delayed. Letters were often months late if they arrived at all. Entire paragraphs were redacted with thick black ink. Political prisoners had it even worse. Many weren't allowed to write or receive anything unless they were considered reformed. And of course, writing from within the camps was even more difficult. Still, people tried. Some prisoners wrote poems on scraps of birch bark, planning to smuggle them out hidden in shoes. Others dictated letters to those who could still remember how to spell properly, trading favours for a single carefully chosen sentence. You write back. Or at least you try. You ask the poetry guy for help. He has the best handwriting. You dictate the words slowly, trying not to sound too desperate or too dead inside. Just enough to say, "I'm still here. I remember you. Please keep remembering me." You bribe a guard with a piece of dried fish to make sure it gets sent. He nods, pockets the letter and walks away. You have no idea if it'll ever leave the camp, but at least you wrote it. At least the words exist. That night you lie awake, running your fingers over the crease in your sister's letter, memorizing every bump, every smear of ink. You reread the part about the stars. You look up through the crack in the barracks roof. No stars tonight, just cloud. But you imagine them anyway. You remember a game you used to play as a kid, naming constellations, making up your own. The boiling pot, the 2 lost boots, the chicken that got away. You smile, just barely, just enough. Because for a moment, this camp isn't your entire universe. For a moment, you're more than just a number. You're someone with a sister, someone with a memory, someone who still has letters left to write. You lose track of what day it is, not in a forgetful way, in a deliberate way. You stop counting, you stop caring. Days blur together like snowflakes in the wind, each one different technically, but impossible to tell apart once they hit the ground. But then something changes. A murmur moves through the camp like smoke. People whisper, glance over their shoulders, pretend not to talk. Even the guards seem a little more alert, their boots heavier, their glances sharper. Something is happening. At first you think it's another death, maybe a work accident, maybe someone escaped again, briefly before becoming part of the frozen landscape. But then you hear it. Inspection. A real one. From Moscow. Not some board party official with a clipboard, not a camp commandant doing a half-hearted sweep. This time it's a team of government inspectors, dispatched from above. People in coats too clean for this place, people with shoes that haven't tasted snow. You'd think this would be good news? It's not. Because now the performance begins. The guards scramble like ants kicked out of their hill. Barracks are scrubbed. Uniforms are redistributed. Again. The lucky few get gloves. The rest get shouted at to hide their frostbite. You're pulled off your regular duty and told you'll be part of the welcome party, which is hilarious. The only thing you've welcomed lately is dysentery. But you nod because volunteering isn't optional. They take you to the front gate and put a shovel in your hands. Not to dig, but to pose. You and 6 other Zeks are arranged like chess pieces around a small patch of packed snow, repairing a section of fence that's already straight enough to pass a ruler test. You try not to look directly at the inspectors when they arrive, but you see them out of the corner of your eye. 5 men, bundled up like tourists, escorted by a camp officer who suddenly walks with exaggerated pride, like a man who invented cold and wants to show off his masterpiece. One of the inspectors walks up to you. He's clean-shaven, young, soft. The kind of man who's never had to bite his tongue to keep it from freezing. He smiles politely. "How is the work?" he asks. You stare at him. Your brain fires off 4 possible answers. 1. It's a nightmare factory made of ice and regret. 2. My soul left my body 3 weeks ago. 3. Can I have your coat? 4. Fine, comrade. You pick the 4th. Fine, comrade. He nods like he believes you. Or worse, like he doesn't care. He moves on. The others follow. And just like that, the illusion holds. The tour continues. They're shown the medical station, which has been scrubbed until it smells like bleach and lies. The kitchen, where the soup today actually contains vegetables. The laundry shed, where someone is singing an approved folk tune at just the right volume. They're even brought into the barracks. Yours. You return in time to watch the last part of the performance. The Zeks are standing next to their bunks, backs straight, blankets folded, hands clasped behind them like they're in the world's saddest military parade. The inspectors walk through slowly, nodding, taking notes. One of them leans toward your bunkmate, an old man missing 2 fingers and most of his hope. "How are you treated?" The old man smiles with 3 teeth. "Like brothers," he says. After they leave, no one speaks for a while. Then someone mutters, "He didn't say whose brothers." Laughter. bitter, but laughter. Later you hear the inspectors met with the camp commandant behind closed doors. There was a discussion about efficiency metrics and moral improvement. There was even a proposal for merit bonuses. You don't ask what those are. You know you'll never see one. The next day it's over. The performance ends. The borrowed coats are taken back. The soup returns to its watery self. The singing in the laundry shed stops mid-note. Someone draws a new poster in charcoal near the fence. It reads, "Thank you for visiting Camp Illusion. Hope you froze well." It's erased within the hour, but not before it spreads. Because the Gulag is made of many things. Wood, ice, screams, but also memory. Even fake visits from fake saviors get added to the unofficial history. And here's the thing the books sometimes get wrong. Inspections did happen. The Soviet government loved showing off, but they were always staged. Reports were drafted in advance. Prisoners were coached. Guards were threatened. And any complaint, any sliver of truth, redacted, burned, or simply lost. Official records from camps like Kolyma or Vorkuta often showed high prisoner satisfaction scores during these visits. Clean facilities, adequate food, positive morale. Meanwhile, in the snow outside, men were using their own belts to hang themselves in the latrine. But the lie, it was essential, because the machine needed oil, and the oil was lies. You think about that at night, while listening to the familiar creak of bunk wood and the occasional cough that sounds more like a death rattle. You think about the inspector's face, so clean, so detached, like he'd walked through a painting, not a camp. And maybe he had. Maybe he'll file a report tomorrow stating camp operational, conditions acceptable, prisoners productive, and maybe, years from now, someone will read it and believe it. Unless someone like you tells the truth. You reach under your bunk, pull out a splinter of charcoal and a scrap of birch bark. You begin to write. Not much, just a line. We pretended to smile and they pretended to care. You tuck it away. It won't survive long. But maybe you will, and maybe that's enough. Sometimes, when the snow is thin and the wind takes a break, you can see the mountains. Not up close. They're still distant, looming like the idea of freedom, but clear enough that you can make out their jagged teeth slicing the horizon. They don't look friendly. Nothing here does. But they're beautiful in a sharp, terrible way. Like a crown made of knives. You stare at them during morning lineup. You let your eyes drift past the barbed wire, past the guard tower, past the endless churn of grey sky. And you think, what's on the other side? It's a dangerous thought. But you're not the only one thinking it, because now the whisper making its rounds through the camp isn't about inspections or kefir or some poor soul caught hoarding matches. It's about escape. The word is never spoken aloud. No one's stupid enough to say it, but it's there, in the pauses between shovels hitting ice, in the sideways glances during tool check, in the way two prisoners brush hands a little too long when passing a bread crust. Something's brewing, and you're not sure whether to run toward it or away from it. Let's get something straight. Escaping a gulag isn't heroic, it's suicidal. This isn't a jail with a back door and a blind guard. This is thousands of square miles of frozen, howling nothing. No roads, no signs, no shelters, just trees, snow, wolves, and silence. If the guards don't shoot you, the cold will. If the cold doesn't, hunger will. If you survive all that, you still need to cross mountains or rivers or taiga for weeks before hitting anything that could even pretend to be civilization. And then there's the math. The camp keeps a head count every morning and every night. If you're missing, everyone suffers. Rations get cut. Workloads increase. And the guards, they don't search to rescue. They search to make an example. You've seen the results. A man tried it last winter. Dug a hole under the fence with a stolen spoon. Disappeared into the trees. 3 days later, they found him. His fingers were gone. His face was chewed. By animals or frost, no one knows. He died strapped to a plank in the infirmary. Didn't even speak. Just blinked once, then stopped. But now the idea has returned. Because something is different. The guards have grown sloppy again after the inspection. One of the searchlights is broken. The fence near the timber yard leans like it's tired too. And it's summer. Barely. But still. The snow melts. The rivers flow, the nights are shorter. You overhear whispers. 4 men, planning. Not you, of course. You're not invited. You're not strong enough. Not fast enough. And let's be honest, you don't look desperate enough. The ones who try to escape always have that look. Wild eyes. sunken cheeks, minds already halfway gone, the kind of men who'd rather die running than live kneeling. One of them is Stepan. Of course it is. You watch him for days, trying to read the plan in his movements. He sharpens his tools a little too carefully, packs his bread crusts into cloth instead of eating them, spends more time in the laundry shed, not to wash, but to speak quietly near the stovepipe where voices disappear into smoke. Then, one morning he's gone. No alarm, no search party, no gunfire, just gone. At roll call they don't even flinch. They've seen this movie before. The guards shrug. One makes a note. The rest of you get half rations for a week. You're not surprised, you're just cold and tired and a little bit jealous. But then the search begins in earnest, not for rescue, for revenge. They drag dogs through the snow. They beat confessions out of prisoners who looked at Stepan too long last Tuesday. The barracks are torn apart. You see a guard smash a man's bowl just to check for tools. You stay quiet, you watch. 4 days pass, then 5, then 7. A whisper comes from the kitchen worker. Stepan made it past the second river, killed a fox, ate it raw, almost drowned. Then another whisper says, no, he died on day 3, froze halfway up a ridge, found with his mouth full of moss. No one knows, no one will ever know. And that's the thing about escape. It's not really about escaping, not here. It's about trying. It's about reclaiming the one thing they haven't managed to crush. Choice. Even if it's a stupid, doomed, frostbitten, insane choice. Even if it ends with your body picked apart by birds. Because the thought itself, I could leave, is a kind of freedom. Just the whisper of it warms you better than soup. Some prisoners make plans and never act. They just need the blueprint, the fantasy. It keeps them breathing. One man in your barracks draws maps with his fingernail on the wall every night. He names rivers he's never seen, sketches paths between mountain ranges. He's never taken a step. But you think he might be the freest man here. You consider it. Escape. What would you need? Boots that don't fall apart, a coat that doesn't leak, a compass, matches, a knife, rations. You have a bent spoon, 2 pieces of bark and a sock with a hole in the heel, so not great, but you still imagine it. One night you dream you're climbing a ridge, snow underfoot, wind behind you, no fences, no guards, just space, and somewhere ahead, a fire, a real one, with smoke rising into a sky that isn't grey. You wake up smiling, then you touch your toes to see if they're still there. They are, for now. Historians argue about escape attempts from the Gulag. Some say they were rare, suicidal acts of desperation. Others claim they were more common than records suggest, just hushed up, erased from reports. The truth is probably both. For every Stepan there were 5 others who never made it past the fence, who were buried in unmarked pits or eaten by the landscape. But that's not the point. The point is that some tried, that they chose, that for one moment, however brief, they decided they were more than a number. More than a body. They were a soul moving forward. You don't try. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But that whisper, it's still in your chest. And sometimes that's enough. You start hearing numbers. Not prisoner numbers. Those are always shouted. These are quieter, shared in half whispers, scratched into wood, murmured in the corners of barracks after lights out. The numbers of years. How long someone's been in. How long someone has left. How long someone's already died inside. For some, the numbers are small, 5 years, 10. Politicals, mostly. People who once said the wrong thing, signed the wrong letter, read the wrong poem out loud at the wrong party. They talk about time like it's a long hallway with a distant exit sign. Then there are the lifers, the ones with 25-year sentences. Sometimes more, sometimes no sentence at all, just without term. You meet one of them, an old man with a spine like a question mark and eyes like dead glass. He tells you his name, but you forget it instantly. What you remember is his number, 08291, and that he's been here longer than the stove in the barracks. How long, you ask? He shrugs. Since the Tsar fell. You laugh, but he doesn't. He means it. He was moved from one prison to another for decades. Names changed, borders shifted, governments rose and collapsed, and through it all he remained, just another piece of furniture in the Soviet house of punishment. You want to ask what kept him alive, but you're scared of the answer. Others count days. One woman scratches a line into the side of her bunk each morning. You see her do it, quietly, ritualistically, like a prayer. The wood is covered now, top to bottom. You try to count the lines once, but give up after 200. She's not waiting for release. She's waiting for something, maybe just a reason. You used to count too. At first, the days were like bricks, stackable, solid, giving shape to your sentence. But eventually the bricks crumble, rain erodes them, wind scatters them. Now, all you know is you've been here long enough to stop flinching at gunshots and to start forgetting your own handwriting. And you're not the only one unravelling. Yuri is slipping. The mechanic-turned inmate, your infirmary friend, the guy who once joked about missing cigarettes more than his wife, he's not joking anymore. You catch him staring into space during meals, not moving, not blinking. One night he doesn't lie down, just sits upright on his bunk until morning, eyes open, hands folded. You ask him if he's okay. He says, "My mother had a garden," and that's all, no follow-up, just that. It breaks your heart a little. You try to bring him back with small things, a sliver of beet from the kitchen, a dirty joke from the laundry guy, a line of poetry scratched into bark. Sometimes it works, sometimes he laughs. But the spark is fading. You know it because you've seen it before. There was a man in Barracks 3 who stopped talking altogether, not in protest, just in exhaustion. His eyes went dull. His steps became slow. One day, during roll call, he simply didn't step forward. The guard knocked him down. He didn't move, didn't scream, didn't blink, didn't exist. They left him lying in the snow. You think about that more often now. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Surviving the Gulag isn't just about not dying. It's about not disappearing, not going blank, not becoming a ghost with a heartbeat. And the line between surviving and vanishing, it's thinner than thread. Some prisoners try to hold on to their sentences like lifelines. 3 more years, they whisper, 2 more winters. My wife's waiting, she promised. But you've seen what happens when those sentences end, and nothing comes. There was a man named Pavel. Bright eyes, smart mouth, probably got in trouble for saying what everyone else was too scared to think. He served 7 years, did every day with discipline and hope, said he had a plan, said he was going to write a book, said he'd kept all the stories in his head. The day of his release, he was given clothes that didn't fit, a ticket to a town that no longer existed, and a loaf of stale bread. He made it 20 feet past the gate, then turned around. They say he spent the night just outside the fence, sitting in the snow, staring at the camp. By morning, he was gone. Some say he walked into the woods. Some say he hung himself with the belt they gave him. You don't ask which version is true, they're all true. Because after this place, freedom isn't a door you walk through. It's a wall you climb after forgetting how to stand. And here's a scholarly question. How many prisoners actually wanted release? Not many memoirs talk about it. Most focus on survival, on suffering, on endurance. But freedom? It's complicated. Because when you live in routine long enough, even a brutal one, you adjust. You learn the rhythms, the threats, the ways to cheat the system just enough to survive. And when that structure is gone, what's left? One man said, "I wasn't free when they let me go. I was just unfenced." Another said, "The camp ended, but I didn't." You understand that now, because you feel it. Even if they opened the gate tomorrow, even if they said, "Congratulations, comrade, you are rehabilitated," where would you go? Home, if it even exists? Work? You haven't touched a real machine in years. Family, they might be dead, or afraid, or strangers now. No one's waiting. No one's coming. And so, you keep counting, but differently. Not days, not years. You count moments. A spoonful of sugar, a smile from the laundry woman, a line of song hummed in the dark. These are the only units of time that matter now. That night you lie in your bunk and stare at the ceiling. You whisper to yourself, "Still here," not as a victory, but as a reminder. That, despite everything, you still are. Snow again. Not storm. Not the thick, angry snow that hides your footsteps and chews at your ears. This is softer, relentless, quiet as dust. It falls in a slow, steady hush, layering everything in white until the world feels muted, blurred, like someone's trying to erase the camp inch by inch. You watch it settle on the barbed wire or on the towers, on the shoulders of guards who don't bother brushing it off anymore, on the shoulders of prisoners who've stopped noticing it. You included. You're on fence repair duty today, again, which is always amusing. You fix the fence that holds you in. You mend the walls of your own cage. It's poetic in the bleakest possible way. You wrap wire with numb fingers while a guard smokes behind you, watching like a hawk who's never hunted anything but mice with frostbite. Beside you, a younger prisoner, maybe 18, works in silence. He arrived 2 weeks ago, fresh-faced, scared, still flinching when someone coughs too loud. He doesn't speak unless spoken to. You'd call him kid, but everyone here gets old fast. You ask what he did. He shrugs. Wrote a joke. That's all he says. You don't press. Later you hear it was a joke about potatoes. Classic. The camp is full of men and women who made the mistake of being funny, or smart, or just too visible. The snow continues, your hands are raw, your lips are cracked, but you keep working, twisting the wire tight. The fence hums faintly when you pull it, a sound like tension made audible. You glance toward the hills, still there, still distant, still sharp. Someone once told you that the mountains are moving, that each year they grow a centimetre higher. You have no idea if that's true, but you like the idea, that even they are trying to rise. In the barracks that night, things feel still, like the whole camp is holding its breath. Even the poetry guy is quiet, staring at his hands like he's counting invisible sins. You crawl into your bunk and pull your blanket over your head, but you can't sleep. Not yet. Not tonight. Because something's coming. Not freedom, not death. Just an ending. You don't know how you know. You just do. Maybe it's in the wind. Maybe it's the way the guards didn't yell at roll call. Maybe it's the way the soup tasted slightly less like boiled despair. But it's there. Something shifting. You wake before dawn. No alarms, no shouting, just silence. When you step outside, the snow has stopped, and there's a message hastily scrawled on the wooden wall near the latrine. 3 words. Camp closing soon. You read it 3 times. It doesn't register. You look around. The others have seen it too. No one speaks. Not because they don't believe it, but because they do. The camp ending? What does that even mean? Where do you go when the place that destroyed you disappears? The guards confirm it hours later. Something about restructuring, about redeployment, about transferring personnel. They don't say why, they don't say when, they just say, prepare. Some men cheer, some laugh, ugly, bitter, confused. Yuri weeps. Just once, then wipes his face and mutters, too late for me. The poetry guy writes a new line on the wall. The gates open wide, but who walks through as themselves? And that's the question, isn't it? When the Gulag ends, what's left? What are you now? You think about the first day, when you arrived, starving and stunned, when the snow felt like punishment and the guards still scared you. You remember the hunger, the cold, the jokes, the infirmary, the songs and the punishments, the escapes, the counting. You think of Stepan walking into the woods with hope packed in frostbitten fists. You think of the harmonica no one dared play. You think of the letter folded against your heart. All of it, yours. And now, it's ending. But don't mistake this for triumph. The Soviet Union doesn't apologize. It reorganizes. Camp closings are just bureaucratic shifts. Some prisoners are reassigned, some released into exile, some vanish in the paperwork. And you're told your sentence is being commuted, not ended, just reclassified. You'll be transferred to a less intensive labour colony, which could mean digging ditches instead of mining, or it could mean starving with a slightly better view, but still, you're leaving. The train comes a week later. You pack what little you have, your spoon, your coat, your charcoal nub, your letter. A guard yells your name. You step forward. And just like that, you're no longer a Zek of this camp. You don't look back. Not because you're brave, but because you're afraid that if you do, you'll never stop looking. The train car smells like oil and regret. It rattles over old tracks, pulling you toward whatever comes next. And as you sit there, pressed between bodies that smell like old rope and lost decades, you finally ask yourself something dangerous. What if I survive? What does that mean? You don't have an answer. Not yet. But the question alone is more than you had yesterday. More than most had, ever. And so, you hold on to it. You stare out through a cracked wooden slat, and for the first time in forever, you see something new. A road, not paved, not marked, but open, waiting. The train rattles on. No one speaks much. You're packed into the transport car with 24 other prisoners, most of them strangers, though a few faces are vaguely familiar from work squads and mess hall queues. Everyone has the same vacant stare, like they've been unplugged and now operate on habit alone. The car groans with every turn. Wind seeps in through the cracks in the wood. You try not to shiver too much. Movement draws attention. And here, attention is rarely a good thing. You have no idea where you're going. That's the part no one warns you about. How terrifying it is to be moved without explanation. One day you're in a camp you've learned to navigate, where you know the power games, the black market rates, who to avoid, who to trust. And the next, you're in a box on rails heading somewhere that might be worse. It usually is. The train stops twice. Each time, armed guards open the doors, bark names, yank out 2 or 3 men, slam the door shut again. You don't hear where they're going. No goodbyes. Just footsteps on ice and the silence that follows. You clutch your coat tighter, your fingers wrapped around that worn letter folded into your inner pocket. It's more fragile now. The creases are soft as petals, but it's still your anchor. By the time the train slows for the 3rd and final time, your legs are numb, your mind hollowed out by hours of nothing. They open the doors and the cold punches you in the chest like it forgot it left you alive the first time. The guards shout. You climb down into a landscape that makes your last camp look like a resort. Welcome to Karajigan. Unofficial name, the last step. You've heard rumours, always dismissed as exaggeration. But now, as you look around, you realise none of them did it justice. The trees are thinner here. The land is flatter, windier, and somehow colder than anything you've felt before. The snow doesn't fall. It hovers. Frozen mist clings to everything, like the air itself has mould. They line you up and call roll. The guards here wear different expressions, not anger, not even contempt, just apathy, like they've been doing this so long they don't even register you as alive. You're marched into your new home. The barracks are even more primitive. No stove, no windows, just holes in the walls where wind can walk in like it owns the place. You're handed your new assignment, Zone 9 Ice Quarry.
Hello.
You don't ask what happened to Zones 1 through 8. The work begins the next morning. It's exactly what it sounds like. Chipping through permafrost with rusted picks and shovels that might have last seen action in the 1800s. The goal? Extract frozen earth for construction material. The earth here fights back. Every strike of your pick sends a jolt through your bones. The ground isn't dirt, it's stone laced with bitterness. The cold has fused soil into something that could cut glass. And the air? It burns your throat like smoke. The poetry guy would call it digging your own coffin, one flake at a time. You hear someone collapse behind you. No one looks, no one helps. You're given your meals in silence, a slice of frozen bread, soup that tastes like shoe water. Once, a single boiled potato, half blackened, still steaming. You hold it like a gift from heaven. The guy next to you tries to trade you for it, offers a needle wrapped in string. You refuse. It's the best thing you've seen in a month. Later you find out the potato was given by mistake. You're beaten for it. Not because you ate it, but because you were seen smiling while doing so. Smiling is discouraged. The guards here don't shout like they used to. They whistle. That's how they get your attention. A sharp 2-note signal that sends your stomach into knots, because every whistle means something. A work command, a shift change, a punishment detail. One day you're whistled over to help dig a new pit near the latrines. You ask why. The guard smiles. For the spring thaw, he says. You realise then, it's not a work pit, it's a grave pit. Every camp has them, but here they build them before the deaths. That's how much planning goes into dying here. You go back to work with dirt under your fingernails and silence in your chest. There's a new kind of hopelessness here. The last camp had laughter, even if it was bitter. Jokes, memory games, the memory museum. Here, no one sings, no one trades, no one even looks up unless forced. Yuri doesn't speak anymore. You think he was broken on the train. He walks, he works, he breathes, but that's all. The youngest prisoner in your crew, a kid named Roman, has already been punished twice for asking questions. His hands are wrapped in rags. You hear him crying at night. No one tells him to stop, because honestly someone should be crying. One evening, during a blizzard, a man tries to escape. He doesn't make it far. He gets to the outer work zone and collapses. The cold wasn't the problem, it was the dogs. They bring his body back on a sled. No ceremony, just a torso-shaped bundle in a blanket. The next morning you're assigned to bury him in the pit you helped dig. You don't ask his name. You just lower the body in and think, this could have been me. This might be me. You lie awake that night, not from fear, but from a new understanding. This place wasn't designed just to imprison you. It was built to make you forget you were ever free, to take the idea of outside and crush it between endless labour and sub-zero fog. There's no memory museum here. No fake slogans, no barter system, just stone, wind, and the echo of boots on ice. But here's what they don't realise. Your coat still holds a letter, your fingers still hold a spoon, and somewhere deep down there's still a whisper. Keep going. You press that whisper against the inside of your skull like a flame under glass, because if this is the last step, you're going to leave footprints. Some mornings, it feels like the sun forgets to rise. You wake in darkness, walk in darkness, eat in darkness, work in darkness. And when the light finally comes, it's not golden or warm. It's a grey smear, barely enough to see your own breath. The kind of light that feels ashamed of itself. You're still in Karajigan, still assigned to the ice quarry, and still trying to understand what survival means when the calendar no longer exists. Days don't pass here, they just repeat. Same shovel, same bowl, same wind, same whistle. Until you start to wonder if you're trapped in a moment that never ends, and then something breaks that pattern. You hear it before you see it. A voice, not shouting, not orders, but a voice, low, steady, speaking in actual sentences, not commands, not fear. It's coming from the infirmary. You wander close under the pretense of dumping out a bucket of grey snowmelt, and when you lean your ear near the cracked wood wall you hear it again. And then he said, "If we are to perish, let it be in truth." It stops you cold. Someone is reading. Books are banned here, or at least books not approved by the party. You haven't seen a real one in over a year. So this is treasure. Later that night, back in the barracks, you whisper to one of the older Zeks, the man with the glass eyes and the silent patience of a statue. What was that voice? Near the infirmary? He glances around, then leans close. His breath smells like metal. They smuggled in a book, piece by piece, hidden in lining, pages stitched into coat seams. You blink. What book? He gives you a look like you just asked if snow is wet. Chekhov? Of course, not Marx, not Lenin, not political theory. Chekhov, the short stories, the quiet ones, the kind that say everything without shouting a word. You learn more over the next few days. There's a small group of prisoners, less than 5, who meet under the guise of latrine maintenance rotation, which is already funny, because who volunteers for that? They take turns reading, not aloud. That would be suicide. Just quietly, huddled in pairs, passing pages wrapped in wax cloth. Some of the pages are only partial, torn at the corners, smudged by sweat and snow. But they're sacred. You're invited in, not because you're clever, not because you're trustworthy, but because they see something in your eyes, that flicker, that itch for meaning. They hand you a page one night. You unfold it like it's glass. It reads, "Do not believe those who try to frighten you with high words, who say that literature must influence minds, must take part in politics. The mission of literature is to tell the truth. You read it 3 times, then again, then again. It's like water in your brain. You forget the cold for a second. You forget where you are reading, and it's dangerous. Not just because if you're caught you'll be punished, but because words, real words, make you remember you're human. And humanity in this place is a liability. The next few days feel different. You walk to the quarry and think about character arcs. You stir your soup and mentally draft your own short story. The man who mistook a rock for a bird. You even imagine a title for your camp memoir, Schiffer Dreams. You begin composing lines in your head. Here's one. The snow knew my name before I did. Here's another. He didn't die. He just stopped replying. You don't write them down, that's too risky, but you remember. One of the group is a former theatre director. He begins teaching you the rhythms of dialogue, how pauses carry weight, how silence is a character. He says, the best plays always have too few chairs. You nod, not because you understand, but because it feels true. Another member used to be a university librarian. He tells you he once organised an entire section on banned literature by scent because the censors didn't check for smell. He laughs like it's still the cleverest thing anyone's ever done. You believe him. There's a debate one night over whether Tolstoy would have survived the Gulag. Someone says he'd convert the guards. Someone else says he'd starve out of principle. Another mutters he'd write an 800-page complaint letter. You laugh until your sides ache, and for a few minutes the camp becomes less frozen, less endless, less impossible, but it can't last. One day, the readings stop. No reason given, no explanation. You ask quietly around, The librarian is missing. The theatre man is back in solitary. The wax cloth pages have vanished. And suddenly the cold feels colder again. The shovel heavier, the soup thinner. You go back to memorizing phrases alone. You scratch lines into your bunk with your thumbnail. You whisper poems into your pillow. But the words are harder to find, because when culture disappears here, it doesn't scream. It just slips quietly out the door. Still, you keep a few fragments tucked in your brain. Misery doesn't need an address, it finds you. The frost was not the villain, it was the stage. I dreamed I owned a clock. It ran backward and lied to me. Chekhov is gone, but he left footprints. And maybe that's the real resistance. Not escape, not sabotage, but memory. The camp can crush your body, but it has to convince your mind. And as long as you remember a sentence, they haven't won. The boots echo behind you, but they don't matter anymore. You walk with the others, stumbling, silent, not quite believing what's happening. There's no speech, no final declaration, no choir or banner, just the gates of Karajigan opening wide for the first time in memory. Like the mouth of a monster that, after years of chewing, finally spits out what it couldn't digest. You. Your name is read aloud. No number, no prisoner, just your name. Like a stone being unburied after the thaw. A voice says, you're released. You don't believe it. You can't believe it. You stand there like a fool until someone behind you gives you a nudge. And then, you walk. One foot, then another. No chains, no guards trailing behind. Just a slow shuffle towards something you can't yet call freedom. You're handed a coat, thinner than the one you wore in. It smells of storage, mothballs, and something faintly sweet. You're given a bundle, bread, a train ticket, and a stamped certificate with your name and a word that says rehabilitated. Like all those years can be erased with a rubber stamp, yet you want to laugh if you want to scream. Instead, you just nod. The train doesn't come right away. You wait at the station, if you can call it that. A sagging bench beside a sign that once said hope, but now just says op. You watch the sky turn pink. Sunrise. A real one. You'd forgotten it had colour. There are others waiting too, stragglers from other camps. They sit in silence, holding their bundles. Some look young, most don't. You exchange no words, not because you're unfriendly, but because words feel too small. The train arrives with a groan. You climb aboard, and then, for the first time in years, you move away. You don't cry, not right away, but when the frost fades from the windows, when the mountains flatten into hills, when the trees stop looking like guards, you feel it break, a slow flood of grief and awe and something like healing. You reach into your coat, the letter is still there, the spoon is still there, the memory is still there. Everything you carried through that frozen purgatory, it's still with you, and always will be. You close your eyes as the train rolls on. This isn't victory, this isn't justice, but it is after, and after is a place worth living in.